Good morning. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, May 20, 2024. Escambia County Board of County Commissioners regular meeting, 9:03 a.m. Please turn your cell phone to the vibrate, silence, or off setting. The Board of County Commissioners allows any person to speak regarding an item on the agenda. Speakers limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise determined by the chairperson to allow sufficient time for all speakers. Speakers, please refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, protests, or any other conduct which interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Upon completion of the public comment period, discussion will be limited to board members and questions raised by the board. For the invocation this morning, it's my honor to have Gonzales Methodist Pastor Andy Perry come this morning. Has had a huge impact on my family for 45 years, the church has. So Andy, if you please, if everyone would rise.
Of this new day and the task you have before us. We thank you, O Lord, for the gift of freedom to be able to meet together and discuss the needs, the challenges, and the opportunities of Escambia County and all of the districts within. We thank you for all these gathered here who, with the servant's heart, have assumed the responsibility to lead and direct the affairs and business of our great county, as well as their willingness to serve in the sacred office of commissioner on behalf of the people of our communities. We ask this day that you would bless our commissioners and all our municipal leaders with a spirit of wisdom and discernment, that they may lead and guide with your spirit, one that is concerned with all, from the least to the most affluent, as they resolve to meet the challenges of their business agenda which they collectively face this day. We ask that through the leadership of our commissioners, that all of the deliberations and decisions that they make in this session will help the citizens of our county to live into the full potential that you would have for us, through commerce, through a strong sense of community, and a deep passion for your will to be done in Escambia County. Lord, protect our commissioners, our municipal leaders, their families, and their constituents this day. Pour out your blessing on their business and decisions, that your name may be glorified in all the heaven. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Commissioner May, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you again, Pastor Perry. And there's an item on the agenda today that's supporting an initiative coming up the first week of June. It's going to be a Cantonment Community Revival, and I want to, I don't expect him to stay for it, but I do want to recognize Andy Perry from Gonzales Methodist Church for working with a number of the African American churches in the Cantonment community with the Cantonment Improvement Committee for a revival at in that Carver Park community the first week of June. So thank you for taking part in that and for being a supportive member of that Cantonment community as well. Madam Council, anything to be added to the agenda this morning?
No, sir.
Commissioner May?
No, we could use a revival, though.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Nothing
right.
for me.
Commissioner Kohler? All right, I have none.
Nothing.
Mr. Administrator, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. Vote by hand. All right, please vote. Item passes 4-0. Commissioners Forum, Commissioner May?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Monday caught me off guard, but I'm glad to be here. Mr. Chairman, I do know that, you know, with NACO and NOPCO.
Mr. Downs sent you well wishes, so I'll convey them for you.
Well,
For him, I mean.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yes.
I don't get a lot of those, but it's great. But I do know that there may be another conflict that I will get with the administrator on for me in June. That may be a problem. And so I know that we're one man down, so I just want to maybe if our colleagues would maybe adjust one date, it'd certainly be appreciated. Certainly want to thank, we were out with Chip Simmons, who was the speaker at First Baptist in Warrenton for Law Enforcement Week. Saw a lot of state correction officers and a lot of law enforcement out, and that was a great time. It was certainly want to thank the Emancipation Proclamation Committee at the Ella Jordan House on yesterday for doing a great job, as well as Leroy Williams for helping us honor a lot of the retired Little League coaches and mentors. Well, we had a great time Saturday honoring them. I do want to send my condolences and prayers to the Beasley family. Unfortunately, in the last 2 weeks, we've had to go to about 6 funerals of young men, young African-American males who lost their lives to acts of violence, and we're going to continue to pray for those families, but we certainly want to continue to help provide resources and opportunities. And one of the highlights of that is, I think, 300 or 400 young people registering to do summer employment with the county. I do want to thank the departments and the directors who are taking a chance on young people and giving them opportunity. I think it's one of the best recruiting tools that we have. When we have 20, I don't know what the number is, Claire, 20 plus, 27 young people who are now permanently employed, who are trying to make a difference in where they live and where they work and where they play. And they probably would not be here in Escambia County if they wouldn't have had the opportunity. So through our summer youth program, and it's just a great recruiting tool. And thank our colleagues, for supporting and finding some other dollars to make it happen. Hopefully, Clara, we can make sure that those young people are getting a livable wage. If that means it needs to be a little increase, I certainly think that that's very important. I mean, we're competing against Whataburger and McDonald's, so we want young people to work hard, but we want them to be compensated fairly, and we know that it makes a difference. See, my former intern, Jordan's here. Jordan, glad you coming to a meeting without getting paid. It's good to see you. And that's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Burgash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things. First and foremost, I have to thank Jamie Higdon and the entire Roads Department. I've come across a lot of issues in the district, currently just spending a lot of time out in the district walking the streets, and every single time myself or Jesse has an issue, I just want to commend the staff for getting out there and getting after it. They've solved so many issues, and the staff does that routinely. They don't get enough credit, so I'll always take the moment to spotlight them, and that group in particular, so I appreciate all those guys. Last week, I appreciate this board rearranging the meeting schedule to allow me to attend the Governor's Hurricane Conference last week. It was, I didn't go on behalf of the board. However, there were a lot of good reasons for me to be there as a board member. I want to thank my employer, ESA South, for sending me. Obviously, I was there for business development and lots of those opportunities as well. But lots of good information for the citizens of Escambia County, including a presentation by Dr. Michael Brennan, who's the director of the National Hurricane Center. And so it's that time of year. We're right around the corner from hurricane season. And I just would encourage all the citizens in Escambia County, be prepared. Make sure you know your evacuation zones. Make sure you have your emergency kit. And I want to remind everyone that the state of Florida has sales tax holidays specifically for the hurricane. They start June 1st and they end June 14th. And you can purchase a lot of different items tax-free. So I would encourage every citizen in the county, be prepared for the hurricane season. Everyone anticipates it'll be active, as we see from the storms in the Midwest. I'll also report, just for general information, they went back and looked at 2004. That was a very, very tough year for Florida. We got hit by 4 storms, including Hurricane Ivan. I had purchased my house in August of that year, and then the Hurricane Ivan came. Thankfully, it wasn't damaged like many other houses were. So what they've reported is their accuracy and their forecast, their long-range forecast, has really improved dramatically. So, there's a lot of different models, there's a lot of different sites, but they recommend that you stay with the National Hurricane Center, and their accuracy has improved by orders of magnitude. So lots going on there. I also want to encourage everyone to attend our ribbon cutting. It's been a long time coming, about 7.5 years in the making, but we are opening a 39-acre boat launch at Lillian Highway and Highway 98. The grand opening ribbon cutting will be June 18th at 11 o'clock. And I certainly would invite the media and all the people. It's a fantastic facility, 60 huge parking spots, pavilions for picnics, play areas, a launch for boats, and a launch for kayaks and canoes. So this is going to be probably one of the best boat launches in Escambia County, if not the region. So we just would encourage everyone to enjoy that. And then stay tuned. Very, very soon, following on the heels of that, we will be cutting the ribbon on the Bradshaw McNair Fire Station in Beulah. It's almost done. I've been out there a couple of times looking at it. Probably within a week or 2 weeks after the boat launch, ribbon cutting, we'll be cutting the ribbon on that fire station. So to Rob Hogan and his shop and all the people that have worked hard on that, I appreciate that. That's going to be a great asset for the community. And finally, had the opportunity to go out to Perdido Key yesterday in my district, and we're very, very close to finally completing that multi-use path, which is amazing. People love it. They're out there riding bikes. They're out there walking and jogging, and I believe the contractor is doing about 60 feet per day. So that's coming up real quickly, and we're going to have a nice ribbon cutting for that as well. So lots of good things to report in District 1, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Kohler?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the few minutes to talk about a few things. A little over a week ago, got invited to go to Pensacola Christian College. The Lieutenant Governor Nunez was there. She did a very nice speech. She got an honorary doctorate of law. We're fortunate to have such a strong leader in the Capitol, and her speech was more about a testimony, I would say, and it was moving, but it was a good day, and I thank her for being here and doing that for Pensacola Christian College. Many of you may have known the last week we had Navy Days. It was the inaugural Navy Days. It went off as well as it could with the storm on Saturday that kind of messed up the Fun Fest and the parade. But overall, the gala, the gallery nights, the run, everything was well. And what I wanted to share is the proclamations we did for both the CO of NAS Whitingfield and NAS Pensacola, and for the city, recognize the relationship with the Navy and our city for the last 110 years. And that relationship has been a beautiful relationship that's brought literally probably billions and billions and billions of dollars into our community, and we need to continue to always work on that relationship. And Senator Broxson gets the credit for that. He was the visionary. He had brought this up about a year ago, and multiple community leaders were asked to get involved, and thanks to his leadership that happened. And if you wonder why the run happened, thanks to Wes Reeder. He was excited about running in the rain. This last week, we had 2 different law enforcement memorials. The one with the Sheriff's Department, I know several of us were there. It was a moving ceremony. Just want to recognize those folks and know that we were thinking about them. Last week, also, Navy League put on Military Spouse Appreciation over at the Yacht Club. That was a very nice event, and good job on the Navy League. And for this week, as you know, we won't meet again before Memorial Day. There's 2 ceremonies. There's one Thursday by the Gulf Coast Vets out at Brancas. It's a weird, I don't know why they decided to do it on Thursday, but they are. I believe it's at 9 a.m. And then on Sunday at Veterans Memorial Park at 9 a.m., they'll also have another ceremony. So for all those folks that have lost someone or had someone that served, we'll recognize those this week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. First, I want to wish a happy birthday to my beautiful wife this weekend. We had a birthday weekend in our household, so want to wish her a happy birthday, most importantly. And then I want to send thoughts and prayers out to the family of Debbie Pfeiffer. She passed away suddenly 2 weeks ago today, and that includes former Commissioner Kevin White as well. She was part of his extended family, and it was just a very sudden occurrence, and they were, kind of taken in the middle of the night with an event at the home. And I also want to recognize Trey Walsingham, who was an Escambia County Sheriff's deputy that responded to the house, stayed with the family, and they wanted me to know, and I believe they spoke to Sheriff Simmons as well, but wanted to recognize what a kind and empathetic response he gave the family for several hours at the home after the event, kind of in the middle of the night into the early morning hours. But certainly want to recognize Trey Walsingham for his response, and as well as the first responders from the county and everyone that was there at the home that evening. But certainly sorry to hear about Debbie's passing. Wes, do you have any words before we begin?
I'm good.
All right. Board, entertain a motion for the proclamations.
So moved.
Please vote. Proclamations pass 4-0. First is going to be the proclamation congratulating Mr. Davis Wood, Public Information and Education Officer in the Community and Media Relations and Public Safety Departments, for his selection as Employee of the Month for May 2024. If Andy and Davis making their way, and Casey, everybody. And you've got the floor, Andy.
Can we have anybody from Public Safety who's here to support Davis to come forward, please?
Sure.
So Andy's going to read the proclamation, but I just want to give a couple of quick words about Davis here. He's a hardworking guy. I mean, he's in CMR, and he has to do public safety PIO stuff. So he stays very busy with social media and everything, all public safety stuff, and especially working real hard in the afternoon. There's not a time that I don't call in the afternoon and go, hey, Randy Wood or Andrew McKay, or somebody's calling me about something, and he'll get right on the spot. So I appreciate Davis's due diligence and his ability to work after hours and on weekends as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm really proud of Davis. We're really excited to be here to recognize his accomplishments this morning. Davis and I actually started on the same day, August 16th, 2021, and it's been a really wonderful 3 years working with him. He's an incredible team player, a hard worker. He will drop whatever he's doing to help somebody out. He supports his team, and Davis, we're really proud of you. Thank you. So now I will read his proclamation. Whereas Escambia County has established an Employee of the Month program to recognize one employee to represent various departments, and whereas Davis Wood, Public Information and Education Officer in the Community and Media Relations and Public Safety Departments, began his employment with the county on August 16, 2021, and is selected as Employee of the Month for May 2024 for the standards of excellence he displays in the performance of his duties. And whereas, in his role as Public Information and Education Officer for Public Safety, Davis is charged with representing each division within the department to include emergency medical services, fire rescue, emergency management, emergency communications, and the Pensacola Beach Lifeguards by managing media inquiries, facilitating interviews, and writing press releases to highlight positive news stories, recruitment opportunities, severe weather alerts, and more. And whereas, Davis displays his commitment to his work by regularly seeking out training opportunities, such as FEMA courses and attending workshops and conferences to enhance his skills as a public information officer and gain a deeper understanding of crisis communications, citizen engagement, disaster response, and media relations. And whereas, Davis has been instrumental in launching new initiatives at Public Safety, such as A Minute with EM, a weekly social media video from emergency management that reaches 10,000 to 20,000 Escambia County residents each week. These videos feature staff and cover a range of topics, including hurricane season preparedness, beach safety tips, and updates on upcoming severe weather. And whereas, when a wildfire spread along Gulf Beach Highway and Dog Track Road on April 4th, 2024, Davis played a pivotal role in communicating updates to the public and the media while working with Escambia County Fire Rescue and Emergency Management, the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, the American Red Cross, and the Florida Forestry Service to provide information on road closures, evacuations, and shelters. And whereas, Davis also serves as the lead public information officer for the Public Information Branch of Emergency Support Function 14 during a disaster and diligently works in facilitating the Community and Media Relations Annual Media Roundtable and meetings with media members and partners to ensure sufficient readiness ahead of hurricane season. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Escambia County, Florida, hereby commends and congratulates Mr. Davis Wood in his selection as the Employee of the Month for May 2024. Board of County Commissioners, Escambia County, Florida, Stephen Berry, Chairman, District 5, Jeff Bergosh, District 1, Michael Kohler, District 2, Lumen May, District 3. Congratulations, Davis.
Well, thank you, Andy, for reading that. It's weird being on this side because normally I write about people that are doing great things, and then when you're now put on the spotlight and you get to now accept an honor, it's different, but I'm tremendously honored. It's amazing to work with my colleagues from CMR and Public Safety. I've said this before, that there's an incredible story that goes on at Public Safety, the things that happen every single day. I'm honored to play a small role in helping get that out there. And of course, I have my family here, my mom and dad. Thank you for the work ethic that you've instilled in me. I love you both so much. And of course, last but not least, if things are going well at work, I believe it's because things are going really well at home. And my wife, Amanda, makes that happen. We're actually welcoming our son, Brooks, here in September. It's our first child. And I'm more than excited and ready to take on this new challenge. So thank you so much. You want to go right here?
Yeah, I'll get right here. Yeah.
And then we might need somebody to fill in on the others.
Just like hold this up. Thanks for bearing with us.
All right, thank you. As they're making their way back, the next proclamation is going to be declaring the week of May 19 through May 25 as Emergency Medical Services Week in Escambia County. Eric Gilmore.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Good morning, Board. This is EMS Week, so we recognize the men and women who comprise of our emergency medical services, and they do a fantastic job day in, day out. They get their butts handed to them more often than not, running the many calls we do in Escambia County. And you've heard us talk about the call loads, the unnecessary calls for 911, and these men and women endure it day in, day out, and they do a fantastic job, and they absolutely deserve the recognition they get, not only this week, but for the entire year. I mean, we run 70,000 plus calls a year. That's a lot. That's a lot for our county, so. Whereas in 1974, President Gerald Ford established Emergency Medical Services Week to recognize EMS personnel for the important work they do in our nation's communities. This year, Escambia County will celebrate EMS Week during the week of May 19th through May 25th with the theme Honoring Our Past, Forging Our Future. And for the period of January 1st to December 31st of 2023, the men and women of Escambia County responded to 81,329 calls. They stand ready to provide critical care, advanced life support, basic life support, bariatric transports to our residents and visitors 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Every day, Escambia County EMS provides us vital public service to ensure our residents and visitors have access to quality emergency care, which dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate for those who experience a sudden injury or illness. Whereas the men and women of Escambia County EMS have certainly risen to many challenges they faced, even if it meant spending countless hours away from their families and friends. And during Emergency Medical Services Week, we have the opportunity to recognize our local EMS heroes for their unwavering commitment to serving our community. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed, the Board of County Commissioners of Escambia County, Florida, hereby declare the week of May 19th through May 25th as Emergency Medical Services Week. Board of County Commissioners Stephen Berry, Chairman, Jeff Bergosh, District 1, Michael Kohler, District 2, Lehman May, District 3. Congratulations, guys.
Morning, Commissioners. On behalf of Escambia County EMS, we'd just like to thank you for this proclamation and the recognition for all that these guys do, these EMTs, paramedics, all of public safety EMS. As you know, we're going to always answer that call 365 days a year, 24/7. We're going to be there and provide the best possible care to the citizens of Escambia County EMS whenever they need us. So thank you very much, and we appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got to hold on. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Here, still there. Thanks again. Good job.
As they're making their way down, next is adopting the proclamation declaring the week of May 19 through May 25 as National Public Works Week in Escambia County. Mr. Administrator Wes Moreno, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ask Public Works, come on up. Road Department, Jamie, bring your group up. I'm extremely proud of these men and women here. This is kind of where I grew up at, is at the Road Department, so these are my people. I'll say one thing for this department. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, if it's inclement weather, they're there. They're on call. The other morning, Jamie and I were on the phone, I guess about 3:30 in the morning when the storms were rolling through. We had trees down all over the north end and some in the south end. By 9 a.m., all the roads were clear. All the roads that didn't have power lines involved were clear. And, I like to think that's amazing, but that's just standard operating procedure for these guys, for this group. They're a great group. They do a lot of things in Escambia County. I'm extremely proud of them. They work hard. Clean sweeps. We do 30 clean sweeps a year. We pick up debris all over the place. Ditch cleaning, grass mowing, Pensacola Beach Public Works as well. We have Memorial Day coming up here this weekend, and they're ready. I met with them last week. We cooked a hamburger and a hot dog. We met, made sure we were all ready to go. And it's a small group out there, but they do phenomenal things out there at Pensacola Beach, keeping that beach clean and meeting all the demands that come with it. I'm going to ask Jamie to hold that, and I'll read the proclamation. It says, whereas it is in the public interest for the residents of Escambia County to gain knowledge of and maintain an understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in our community. And whereas the hardworking men and women who make up the Escambia County Public Works team labor diligently every day to maintain the county's network of roads and stormwater drainage systems, including right-of-way mowing, road resurfacing, street sweeping, hole and pond mowing and maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, dirt road grading, tree trimming and removal, pothole patching, ditch cleaning, sign maintenance, and the repair and construction of drainage infrastructure. And whereas the Public Works rapid response after disasters is critical in restoring public safety for the Escambia County community, with Public Works crews working to clear trees and debris from roadways in order to ensure access for first responders, including Escambia County EMS, fire rescue, and law enforcement, along with utility companies working to restore power. And whereas Pensacola Beach Public Works diligently maintains public areas of the beach, including walkovers, parking areas, parks, restrooms, fishing piers, and roads on Pensacola Beach. And whereas the Fleet Maintenance Division performs preventive maintenance and repair service on county vehicles and equipment, assists in vehicle and equipment acquisition, manages the GPS monitoring system, oversees fuel distribution for county vehicles, and directs the county's surplus vehicle and equipment program. And whereas these services cannot be provided without the dedicated efforts of Escambia County Public Works professionals who are managers and employees at all levels of Escambia County and who are responsible for maintaining, improving, and protecting the county's infrastructure that is essential for Escambia County residents. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners of Escambia County, Florida, do hereby designate the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week, urging all citizens to join in recognizing Escambia County Public Works and to acknowledge the substantial contributions they make to advancing quality of life for all in Escambia County. Board of County Commissioners, Stephen Berry, Chairman. District 5, Jeff Bergaus, District 1, Michael Colo, District 2, and Lumen J. May, District 3. Give them a hand. Thank you, guys.
Good morning. I just want to thank the board for recognizing the Public Works Department. I get the honor to lead 170 of the best men and women you could assemble. They never cease to amaze me. It's like Wes was talking about 3 weeks ago during the storm, 948 trees out of the right-of-way they cleared in a matter of hours. That's amazing. So thank y'all. I'll hold my breath. You want the short people in the front?
Thank y'all again for the great work that you do. While they're making their way, and Wes is making his way back up here, we also ratified the proclamation congratulating Ms. Martha Louise Doxford, a library services technician in the Library Services Department, on her retirement, and expressing our gratitude for her 14 years of faithful and dedicated service to the citizens of Escambia County. Did the clerk's office receive proof of publication?
Mr. Chairman, the clerk's office has received all proofs.
I move we waive the reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Please vote. Item passes 4-0 to waive the reading. Public hearing, first one is 901, public hearing to consider the adoption of an ordinance for an idle speed no wake zone in Bayou Grande.
Do we have any speakers, Mr. Chairman?
We do not.
May I, if I just could,
sorry.
we need to correct a typo just for your reference on page 1, section 1B. The reference to the Florida statute needs to read 327 instead of 427.
We can approve it with that Scrivener's error.
Sure.
Yeah. If there's no objection and no one here to speak, it's in your district, Mike.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to move forward.
Okay, I'll second it.
All right. Please vote. Item passes 4-0. 902, public hearing to consider an ordinance establishing regulations concerning boarding piers at Escambia County public boat launch sites and paddlecraft launch sites. Board, there's an intent to drop this item. We do have 3 speakers, though. Do we want to hear the speakers, or?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yes, I've asked that we drop the item. I don't think it's ready for prime time. There's some issues with it. One of the biggest issues, I believe, is it's applicable to not just my district and Mike's district, but also significantly to District 4. We don't have a District 4 commissioner. I think there's some language in there that needs to be better developed. And so, yeah, I'm asking that we drop it, but I certainly think we should hear from the speakers who came here today. And also, I just want to point out, Galvez Landing, for the people who may be watching this, I'm never going to vote to keep you from enjoying the shoreline there, to sitting at that table, to swinging on the swing, or swimming where you want to swim. I'm never, ever going to do that, ever. Just want to make sure that's clear. There's some misinformation out on social media, but as long as I'm the commissioner, people can enjoy Inner Point Park and Galvez Landing. Yeah, obviously, you don't want to swim in front of a boat. I think there's ways we can get that accomplished. I think the way the piers have been laid out does accomplish that. But telling folks they can't, and that they've enjoyed that facility for all these years, and suddenly, no, you can't go there, I'm not going to support that. So I'm asking that we drop this and bring it back when it's ready for prime time.
Super.
I don't have a problem dropping it. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you. I had a couple complaints, so I'm fine with that, Jeff. But I would like to hear the speakers.
Yeah. All right. The speakers, there are 4 signed up. If you don't wish to speak, given the fact we're not hearing the item, please just wave. First speaker is Norman Jeter.
Hi, my address is 5514 Bobolink Road, Pensacola, Florida 32507. Thank you for your comments, and I'd just like to ask, as this continues on, if we could maybe hold a town meeting of sorts like we've done before. A lot of people are not very informed out there, and I know that the Sun Press also carries information on what's going on up here, and I called the Sun Press this morning, and they used to offer the Sun Press out of one restaurant located out near Perdido Key, and they no longer service that area. So the Sun Press is available, I'm sure, online, but just if you need to get the word out, it's not really getting out. A town hall meeting would be great, and then we could go from there and give us time to let the local folks know what's going on, and I think that would be really good. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely, and consider it done. Before this comes back, we will hold a town hall down there at that church right there where I typically hold them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yes.
Super. Next speaker is, it says Buddy Stromberg, probably.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, my name is Buddy Stromberg. I live at 5671 Cruzat Way. I knew this was going to be a problem back in 2018 when we were dealing with the Marine Advisory Committee, and it was wanting to put a seawall down there and all this. But what I would really like to see happen is if we could get some sand brought in there and put on that shore, which I've talked about. All that got washed away during Sally. And there's been no boat improvement to that launch right there to help. Because the next hurricane we have, it's going to wash that shoreline out, and it's going to be up to the parking lot. That parking lot was poorly designed. I mean, I learned in the Boy Scout how to prevent erosion. The way they done that increased erosion, and the boat launches eroding away. So I'd like for y'all to think about that. And thank you, Mr. Bagash, for tabling this so we can get some people involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mary Inabit. Okay. All right. Thank you. I probably mispronounced your name as well, so I apologize. Carl Montgomery.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Montgomery. My address is 14275 Massey Drive. That's connects to Galvez. The reason that I'm here is for one reason and one reason only, and I want to make it extremely clear because it really weighs on my heart. When I woke up this morning, I was notified. I wasn't even, just like Buddy or whoever the first Norman said, I wasn't aware of the topic. My friend told me right as I jumped out of bed, I got a message on my phone, do you know about this? I ran out of bed and came up here on a 30-minute notice because from what I'm hearing, this is not what America stands for and not what my community stands for at all. If anybody knew how important that boat ramp is to our community, this would be not even a question. And to make a rule that applies at an umbrella term that is not specific enough to cater to the community, to do this for every single boat ramp without knowing the layout or how the order of operations are at that boat ramp. If you knew about Inner Point and if you knew about Galvez boat ramp, you understand that's the heart of our community. That's where hundreds of kids, thousands of kids have caught their first fish. That's where people that don't have the means to have a boat go to enjoy themselves, watch the sunset. Our public accesses, this is so important because our public accesses are being taken left and right. You understand the issue going on with the condos, and this is right in our community, right in our neighborhood. This is one of the last places people can come down and be themselves. We're not apes. We can govern ourselves. We're not acting up. We've never had an issue out of that area. People down there are the most pleasant, understanding, best people on the planet. That's my home. That's my heart. That's my everything. Is that place. And for that to be the rug snatched from out of us without even knowing, I don't know if that land was even deeded in the first 8 houses out there around the area in their deed in about 40 years ago. That's probably not, people don't even know that. But the point is, that place is enjoyed by thousands of people. That is the heart of the community that really and truly makes that place special. And we need to leave it like that at all costs. Because I tell you what, we're not Russia, we're not Mexico. We want America to remain America. And we want to enjoy the beauty of our Perdido Key is one of the most beautiful places in the United States. The people come from miles and miles and miles. And for us, as citizens of Perdido Key, you know how much pride we take in that. We love it with all of our hearts, literally.
Carl.
That's everything to us. I don't want to be sped up. Can I please finish my point?
Your time is up, yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, and I want to let this be known that I appreciate Mr. Bagash because hearing your words really, I felt like I was coming up here on a David and Goliath mission. And I'll be at the forefront of this situation at every standpoint. And
your time is up.
Thank you guys. And we can't let that happen. I appreciate y'all.
All right, board. Go ahead.
Well, I asked him. I said, hey, is this being dropped? But I'd still like to speak on it. And I got my form ready.
Okay.
Larry Downs Jr. Plumbing LLC, because fecal matters. And so do these boat ramps and all of our public accesses. I know. It's under the guise of public safety. That's what every regulation and another law and another sign it just has to go because we can't make it without mama and daddy. I'm going to start calling this government Big Mama government because we got a bunch of weak males who fail to become men. You know, like he said, govern ourselves. Oh, but you just can't do that, Larry. There's a few bad apples. I don't care how many bad apples there are. We're grown men, women. We can make our own decisions. This is ridiculous. Just like he said. What did he say? This ain't Russia. This ain't a communistic country. I would almost beg to differ at this point. I mean, y'all closed, not you, Mike, but the rest of y'all closed the public beaches for a virus that had a 99.9987% survival rate. Think about that. And this is just more ridiculousness. Now, I expect y'all to be leaders, not followers of the science, followers of the safety. You know, I mean, how many backpackings we got to do? Let's pat our each back on the back. Safety, public safety. I mean, it's almost like that's all we see is awards up here from, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to govern you harder. MissionObvious.com.
All right, Board, that's all the speakers. Did we have a motion and a second to drop? We did.
I'll make the motion, we drop it.
All right. All right, please vote. Item passes 4-0.
And Mr. Chairman, I just want to, and I normally don't do this, but Larry, you mentioned something about the public beaches, and I've had a few people ask me about that as well during COVID. I think we closed it for a total of a week and a half, maybe 10 days total. And that was at the urging of each of the presidents of each of the hospitals. That was at the urging of the state. That was at the urging of our sheriff at that time, David Morgan, who came right to that podium and asked us to do it. Now, looking back on it, how are we to know? We didn't know. There was a lot of unknowns, Larry, so it's easy to come in and be the Monday morning quarterback. But I think that this board, I think that this board did what we had to do given the circumstances, and we quickly reopened. We didn't institute a mask mandate. We were balanced in our approach. We didn't force employees to get vaccinated. We let people make their own decisions. So people want to come in here and do Monday morning quarterbacking. Let them get up here and sit on this dais and make those decisions when people are dying in this country and we didn't know. Was it perfect? No. Will it be talked about? Will it be studied? Yes, it will be. Are there problems with the vaccine? I don't know. I hope not. I took 3 doses. A lot of us did because we were traveling and you had no choice. But with all that said, we did what we were advised to do by people who are experts. That's what we did. Thank you.
All right. 903, public hearing to consider an appeal filed by Benjamin Alexander on behalf of James B. Freeman, DBA Freeman Roofing, on a decision made by the Contractor Competency Board on April 9, 2024. Christy Hankins, Assistant County Attorney. All right, Madam Counsel, if you may just help
Certainly.
lead us through the item in the proper format.
So Commissioners, it's been about a year since you last had one of these. This is a petition for a review of a decision by the Contractor Competency Board pursuant to Section 18-59 of your Code of Ordinances. Assistant County Attorney Christy Hankins sits with and advises the Contractor Competency Board. She is here along with representation from the Contractor Competency Board. And you also have Mr. Freeman, and he's represented by counsel. They have filed the petition. I would recommend that they go first. Remember, this is a review of the decision and a record that is already provided. It's in your backup. So we will not be taking any new sworn testimony. They can summarize their arguments and explain to you how they got where they got as far as the decision and the proceedings that took place before the Contractor Competency Board. There is a recommendation on your top sheets there under the 903 public hearing, which is a Part A and B, which is what's being recommended by the Assistant County Attorney and the Contractor Competency Board for your decision today. But certainly, I would provide that Mr. Alexander and or his client go first.
All right, Madam Counsel, I do have 4 speakers signed up to speak. I have Mr. Alexander, James Freeman, Rafiq Hamad, and Larry Downs Jr. So when would we take
Are
public?
the speakers the parties, or who are the speakers?
Well, Mr. Freeman and Mr. Alexander, Rafiq Hamad, is he a principal to the?
He's an employee of Freeman Roofing, so
Okay.
he'd be on behalf of Freeman Roofing as
Okay.
well.
And I presume Mr. Downs doesn't have any standing in the case?
He does not.
Okay, so how would he have, is this something he speaks at or no?
I would suggest that if they were not engaged or involved at the proceeding below, that this would not be an appropriate opportunity. You can restrict people during a quasi-judicial process from speaking. If they did provide testimony or evidence or were involved in the decision below, they should be allowed to speak. I would suggest you allow Mr. Alexander and/or his client go first, then response from the Assistant County Attorney and the Contractor Competency Board representation, and then if there are any additional speakers, we can address whether or not they should have an opportunity at that
Okay.
time.
All right, so Mr. Alexander, so yourself, Mr. Freeman, and Mr. Hamad, now you've got the floor for your
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question to
Yep.
Madam Counsel. I think I do remember the first one we had statutorily. Is this an appeal? I mean, because I thought that, the standing was with the competency board. I mean, we,
Correct. There is they had a quasi-judicial hearing before the Contractor Competency Board. The decision was rendered by the Contractor Competency Board. They did file, Mr. Freeman did file a timely petition with the clerk within 20 days. That does trigger an allowance under your code for them to essentially appeal or ask for your review of that decision. So that's why they are here today.
and a review would be sending it back, or is that at discretion? I'm trying to figure out.
There's a recommended course of action, which is essentially to uphold the decision that was made below. That's the recommendation coming from council to the Contractor Competency Board. Should you all during your review process, after you've heard the arguments from both sides about the decision that was made below, believe it needs to be remanded to the Contractor Competency Board for some reason, I think that's a discussion we should take up at that time.
So the options are to remand it back or uphold what your department is recommending. Those are our two options, correct?
Well, no. I mean, I think what Mr. Alexander is probably going to argue is that you either amend, reduce, or overturn what was rendered by the Contractor Competency Board.
Within the code, do we have that ability?
In my opinion, you do, or there would be no sense for them to file the request for the appeal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Board. My name is Benjamin Alexander. I'm an attorney with Tidwell and Associates, PA. Our office is at 811 North Spring Street, Pensacola, Florida, 32501. Our office has the privilege of representing Mr. James B. Freeman and Freeman Roofing, LLC as their counsel. This is an appeal of a decision based on a hearing that was held on April 3rd, 2024. The decision was rendered on April 9th, 2024. This appeal was timely filed within 20 days. The substantive part of that order finds that Mr. Freeman, in violation of a couple code sections, and ultimately ordered that he pay restitution in the amount of $123,594.39. We filed this appeal, so we believe that there are several errors with the board's findings as well as their ultimate decision. And before I start, I will gladly concede and appreciate the task that the Contractor Competency Board is faced with. This is a tricky issue. Generally speaking, this one was certainly one that had multiple hearings before the board. Ultimately, the board, I believe, got to a point where they decided they had to take some sort of action, didn't want to wait any longer. Ultimately, though, I do believe that action was premature. So as an initial matter, Mr. Freeman had made several offers to make repairs to this building, and I think that's very pertinent. Essentially, in these kind of matters, typically a contractor is given the opportunity to make repairs first. However, at a certain point, the property owners in late September, early October retained counsel. That counsel directed correspondence to my office as well to Freeman Roofing, telling them they can no longer come and work on the property. Ultimately, the board found violations on three different provisions of the code. One for alleged failure to correct an employee's improper installation, one for failure to correct the cited deficiencies from the City of Pensacola's building official, and for receiving funds from property owner for code-compliant roof installation and failing to install the roof materials, and failing at attempts to make corrections resulting in damage to roof materials. For those three violations, Mr. Freeman was fined a combined $2,500. However, those finding of violations were erroneous and unsupported by competent substantial evidence. This was a quasi-judicial proceeding. Ultimately, the board is required to hear evidence and make findings based on that evidence. Now, as I stated, Mr. Freeman had quite visibly offered to make repairs. This was done multiple times. At the hearing immediately before the April 2024 hearing, at that meeting, Mr. Freeman on the record stated that he was willing to make repairs. The Sextons, the property owners, quite loudly yelled no. They didn't want him to come have that opportunity to make repairs. In addition, at that time of the hearing, the permit for the project was still open. So accordingly, at the time that the board reached its decision in April, there was a permit that was open and had been extended. And like I said, there were multiple attempts to make repairs that were never permitted. Ultimately, the board made the findings of violations. However, because of the fact that the permit was still open and the fact that my client had been denied the opportunity to make repairs, we believe that that was premature because at the very least, my client should have been afforded that opportunity to make those repairs because ultimately the Sextons were asking for a lot of money. And to the extent my client is able to mitigate any of that, they should have had that opportunity. That opportunity was denied to them, and we believe that that creates an issue with the board's findings that they're simply not supported by competent substantial evidence, and that they were premature in light of the open permit and lack of opportunity to make repairs. Now, the other issue, of course, is the matter of restitution. First, as this board is familiar, a governmental entity such as the Board of the Contractor Competency Board is set up by county code. It's subject to that code. It's also subject to applicable Florida statutes. Now, in terms of the measure of actual damages, I want to provide the language that was provided to the board at that hearing. Actual damages, as used in the Florida statutes, shall mean the general measure of damages suffered as a direct result of licensee's violation of the statutes for failing to perform a construction contract. Actual damages are calculated as the difference between the contract price, together with any change orders, and the cost of construction completion by another builder where the cost of completion is for the same scope of work and using the same materials. Now, during the multiple hearings, several different damage valuations were provided by the Sextons in support of their request for restitution. They sought at various times sums in excess of $288,000, $292,000, and at one point even $382,000 that they were seeking to recover on a contract that was for $87,000. At the board hearing, one of the board members, a gentleman named Mike Batchelor, who is a roofer, noted the dissimilarity between the two contracts. Essentially, he said the contract that they're trying to have to receive restitution for was essentially for a Cadillac, and that's not what they had originally obtained with my client. It was not similar scope of work. It was not same materials. Ultimately, the board didn't use those numbers. Instead, what the board did was they entered the sum of $123,594. This was based on a combination of several things. First, the original contract price of approximately $87,000. In addition, at those hearings, the Sextons brought forth invoices for an engineer and an architect that they had retained, and they were permitted to recover those, but not their attorney's fees that they also sought. Finally, the board entered an amount for the removal of the roof. This is the part that is a severe issue for us. In February of 2024, Freeman Roofing and the Council for the Sextons were engaged in settlement discussions. Late February, Mr. Freeman, through myself, made an offer for settlement that included a proposed estimate. This was a settlement in furtherance of trying to compromise. Relevantly, Florida Statutes 90.408 requires that evidence of an offer to compromise a claim which is disputed as to validity or amount, as well as any relative conduct or statements made in negotiations concerning a compromise, is inadmissible to prove liability or absence of liability for the claim or its value. The Sexton's Council brought that and filed that with the board. That was confidential settlement communications that was used as evidence. One of the provisions of that estimate was used to calculate the amount required to remove the old roof. However, this is not in line with the competency board's own rules that require them to follow the provision of actual damages as set forth in the Muni Code and as set forth in Florida Statutes 489. We didn't have evidence as to a separate contract from another builder with the same scope of work and materials. As such, what the board did was they used information that was confidential and should not have been provided at all. We, of course, objected to it at the hearing and specifically for its usage because it was meant to compromise. The whole point of keeping those kind of communications confidential is to allow parties to freely communicate in order to reach settlement. If, of course, a party knows that its settlement communications are going to turn around and be used as evidence against them, that will dissuade a party from trying to settle and trying to negotiate. For that reason, the Florida statutes find that those kind of communications are confidential and cannot be used as evidence as it was used here by the board. Ultimately, the board's findings of violations were erroneous because of the open permits and the lack of repair. The actual damages calculation was also erroneous because of the misuse of confidential communications and because the board simply didn't follow its own damage calculation. Again, in order to find that, it's a difference between the original contract price and a replacement contract of same scope and materials. That was never submitted. The board never had that evidence. As such, the finding of restitution was improper. My client urges the board to reverse this decision. We believe that under the circumstances and under the evidence submitted, an order of restitution was improper under the circumstances. We don't believe that we need to continue to litigate this. I don't believe a remand is proper. Essentially, like I stated, there were some 8 or 9 meetings until we got to this point. The petitioners of that original complaint had multiple opportunities, not to mention access to Muni Code, which set the rules of the board. They failed to submit the proper appropriate evidence. They instead attempted to use compromise communications in order to reach that decision. It's simply not supported by competent and substantial evidence. And for that reason, I urge the board to reverse this decision, enter a judgment for Mr. Freeman and Freeman Roofing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Christy?
Good morning. I'm really
Morning.
glad that I get to follow him and not the speaker before him. So hopefully we've all cooled down a little bit. I have Alton Lister here with me from the Contractor Competency Board. Also present is another member of the board who sometimes sits in he's the vice chair and sits in Mr. Lister's place, just in case it was a situation where Mr. Lister wasn't present during a hearing and you wanted additional questions. As to, just to address a couple of the legal issues that are before us, it is only as to the substantial competent evidence question. If you'll recall, the last time we did one of those hearings, there was also a due process argument. That is not in play in here. Also not argued is whether or not the proper law was applied. So these damages definitions that you've received, I'll give you a quick overview on that. The damage definition that he described to you is a damage definition that's used in residential recovery by the Construction Industry Licensing Board to determine whether or not you can recover funds from the residential recovery fund. It has not been adopted by our board for the purposes of determining damages or restitution. We actually have a specific section on restitution that describes restitution. It's in this disciplinary proceeding. It's in the code that was provided to you in the backup that explains that it is financial loss to the consumer. That's how our board has chosen, that's how the county has voted and decided that's how it would be handled. It's it's on close to the last page of the exhibit that you were given, exhibit. 19. Okay. So that deals with the damages, so that determination is not something before this board or determining what is the correct code, what is the correct statute, because the board has adopted its own code language. I want to address another matter also while we're there, because it's not really relevant to the facts that were relied upon, other than it said that that Freeman was not allowed out there to do anything on that roof. And I just want to address it up front so that so we're all working from the same information. What happened in this case is this is a city case. This is not a county building. This is not something that was inspected by county inspectors. It was inspected by the city. But because he's a registered, because Freeman is registered with Escambia County, it came before our contracting board to address the issues. The city had told him he had to hire an engineer because he had installed a roof that did not meet the manufacturer's installation requirements. That is a Florida building code requirement. It is not something that we can waive as a county or as a city or as a municipality. We have to follow the Florida building code. And so there was a failure to follow the Florida building code. So the city, Bilbrey, who is the city building officer, said that he had Tony Clement go out, who's an inspector. The inspector goes out, reviews it after they'd already closed it and said that they finalized it and approved it. And then when the owners of the property called to the city again, they sent Tony Clement back out. He took another look according to the required manufacturer's installation instructions and found multiple problems. So they reopened the permit, they got rid of the first inspection, and they had a meeting in September with all of the parties. And in that meeting, they laid out multiple items that had to be reviewed and completed. And primary to that was that because they didn't follow the requirements of the manufacturer's installation instructions, they had to get an engineer's report that would make sure that whatever they did was in line with the original manufacturer's instructions, because that is Florida building code. That is not something they could waive. So that's where the problem initiated with anybody going onto the property, was that Freeman never got the engineering inspection that was required. And that engineering inspection would have addressed 4 other issues. So there was nothing to go on the roof to fix until they had approval from an engineer taken to the city reviews it, determines whether or not that's going to be allowed to meet the requirements of the Florida building code. And then if it did, then he would be allowed on the roof to do the work. But he never came forward with a plan. So I want to also point out that it was put on the record and made clear within the final hearing, the attorney within the final hearing, which is, it's marked as April 4th in your backup, but it was actually the April 3rd hearing. It was page 100 and 101. The attorney for the Sextons, who are the property owners, he came forward and explained after that accusation had been placed that they had not been allowed on the roof to make the repairs. He explained that the notice that had been provided merely says, and this is on page 100, line 22, the notice merely says, here are the problems with what you installed. It does say you cannot come out because we don't want the contractor just coming out to fix until we know how they're going to fix it. But it invites them to propose to us how they're going to fix the problems and come out and fix it. And that was from the representative for the Sextons. So it wasn't a matter of that they weren't allowed to come fix it. It was that they didn't have a plan to fix it. And you had to have the plan per the manufacturer and able to make the repairs. So it wasn't just a blanket, you can't come out anymore. I would also point out there's ample record, including in the Arcadia report, where they had come out to make a repair to the rust damage that had been done to the paint on the roof, and used steel wool and increased the amount of damage that was there. So increased the amount of rust in their first attempt to make repairs on that roof. So with those things in line, I wanted to walk you through the charges and walk you through the evidence, and then if you have any questions, we have representatives here to answer. The first case was 230670. It was a failure to supervisor under Florida, Escambia County Code 1837D9H. On the order, the language was not correcting employees' improper installation of boots, improper installation of flashing, and additional damages that resulted during the attempt to make corrections to the deficient roof. The substantial competent evidence appears in attachment 26, which is the Arcadia report. It includes an engineer's report, which is signed and sealed by a professional engineer, about the rust spots where the galvalume was missing or rubbed off with photographs, the vent stack boots, they were improperly installed, and a non-high temp boot was used on an exhaust vent stack. Section of roofing panel was spliced in and out at the vent and not per manufacturer guidelines. That's at the photographs 33 to 41 of the same exhibit. And also, there at page 5 of 48, there's a discussion of flashing transitions where the installation caused a lap at the old roof panel, and that's at photos 54 and 55. There were city official communications, that's exhibit 11. 1026, there's an email from Jonathan Bilby saying that the roof boots are incorrect, the flashing is incorrect, and they needed to get the rust off there. Exhibit 24, there's an email from Jonathan Bilby laying out the 2020 Florida Building Code, section 15061, which is the one we discussed previously. You have to install according to the manufacturer's installation instructions. There was emails from the victims in this case, the sextons. Exhibit 37, where an email from September, the sextons sent an email to Melissa, said Jimmy has only been here 1 day to supervise. So this all goes back to whether or not you were supervising the installation. According to the sextons who were there, it's their business, he had only been out there 1 day to supervise. There's also a timeline that was provided in Exhibit 38. And Exhibit 42 is an email with the roofing manual. There were also statements made by then the defendant, now appellant. At Exhibit 40, there's an 8/31/23 email from Freeman listing all items which need repair work. There's Exhibit 13, where Rafiq Hamad said that the permit will remain open until the roof is done right, another admission that the roof had not been done correctly. Exhibit 14, and I should make it clear, Rafiq Hamad was the one that was on scene most often. Exhibit 14 at page 109, Freeman says he can't just sit there on a job. Exhibit 14, 12/6/23, there's manufacturing is getting me a letter right now. That letter was never, you won't find that in any backup. It was never provided. On page 111 of the same exhibit, not a system warranty, so I can use anything I want to. That's in disregard of what the Florida Building Code. Page 111, 13 through 21. I got the city officials straight. This is coming from Freeman. I got the city officials straight. However, city official email that is also provided in your backup showed that nothing had changed. So it was his opinion. He was doing it basically his way, and the city's opinion had changed and agreed with him. So that was the failure to supervise. Wasn't on scene, and of course, we have ample evidence it went in incorrectly. On the next case, 2312123, that is, count 1 is a disregard of failure to correct building code violations of any municipal. So that's 18-37C1, that's our code. In the order on Exhibit 5, page 2 of 5, the order said it was failing to correct cited deficiencies from the City of Pensacola's building official. The substantial competent evidence supporting that can be found at attachment 44. There's this is from the city. There's a work order and inspection details. The work order and inspection details is a contractor assist dated 9/19/23. This is Tony Clement that we talked about, the inspector for the city. The listing that must meet the manufacturer's specifications are correct the roof boots, fix the flashing, remove the skylights, and add closer strips. Finally, he needed a licensed structural engineer to provide a letter prior to final inspection attesting to the roof loads, to the additional screws, because multiple screws were put in place, which was not within the manufacturer's requirements. And they ended up being closer together than the requirement. And then also verify the panel-to-panel screws are acceptable, because this is a purling roof, which means you have to screw into the purlins, And in many places, it showed that it was only screwed into the lower roof. It was a re-roof, or a roof over. So in many places, the evidence shows it was only screwed into the metal and not into the purlins. And then also verified that the self-tapping and point screws are interchangeable because they didn't use the screws that were required by the manufacturer's instructions. In the transcripts at attachment 18, page 49, line 4 to page 51, line 10, Jonathan Bilby was sworn in and testified. He outlined he gave an outline to include the above items that I've just listed to you, and when that information was given to Freeman. He also went into Freeman, was given an extension in March 15, 2024, which had been agreed upon by email by the sextons. So that was, after all these hearings had started, the sextons agreed to allow him to have that email, to allow him to have an extension on his permit. They also allowed, which would be counter to what you've been told in the argument by the appellant, since there would be no sense in them allowing to have agreeing to an extension if they were not going to allow him to come to the roof to make repairs. The original the new expiration date would be September 11th, 2024. In an email, in attachment 18, the sextons explained at page 57, lines 7 through 13, damage done when they attempted to clean the rust using steel wool. Now it is even more rusted. They were supposed to meet engineering plan before they did the skylights, which is our main leaking factor, and just never did it. There was evidence of screws actually being placed into the plastic skylights, which was part of the leaking problem. Same exhibit, page 59, Jonathan Bilby says it seems items have not been corrected that were identified. At page 60, 13 through 23, believe they could be corrected. Still want engineer's report. This is all coming from the official for the city. Still want engineering report. We look at it from the excuse me, from the manufacturer's installation requirement and the Florida Building Code. Page 63, as he can then. At page 63, Freeman admits it is not a roof installed to manufacturer's installation instructions, but followed his 47 years of roofing that told him how to do it. Then he goes on in the same breath to say that the roof is on correctly, and he says that the engineering report was not given to the city because I thought that Rafiq had done it. So this goes back to the original count on the first case, is his failure to supervise. The sextons provided in that same hearing, page 70, the sextons pointed out there were 20 pictures of where they missed purlings, and that is where the leaks are coming from. On page 73 of the same exhibit, Bilby goes on to say not installed to manufacturer's installation specifications, which is why the engineering report is needed. Then I pointed out to you already the Florida Building Code. And then the engineering report that was finally handed to Bilby, which was handed to Bilby by the county, because he still had not received it by Freeman. Bilby was given the opportunity to review it during our hearing, and that's at attachment number 9. And that report, when finally handed to Bilby said it didn't address the issues. It's not an engineering, he didn't go into this, but if you look at the report, you'll see it's not signed and sealed by an engineer. And there's actually no identity of who signed. It just repeatedly says JBT, which I'm sure that the people on the board knew who that was, but as an exhibit here, you would not know who that was. And once again, it's not signed and sealed. You can look at the Arcadia report if you want to see what an engineering seal looks like. It's very similar to any other seal that you would see. The next count was count 2. They were found not guilty because the permit was still open, so we don't need to go into that. The count 3 of this case was misconduct or incompetency in the practice of contracting, and any or other form of misconduct or incompetency. That's 1837D, 13C3. There were other details within 1837D13 that I wanted to point out so you know why this is set out in the part, and this was also in the record. The other detailed misconducts or incompetencies would include failure to honor a warranty, failure to abide by a mediation agreement. Those are the ones that the county follows. And this is important because this goes back to the definition of damages that were provided by the appellant. The ones that what the appellant provided is the state standard. This is the county standard, and we don't follow the state standard of what we consider misconduct or incompetency. The state standard includes things such as fraud, and it's more fraudulently false reporting or not following an order by the CILB. So that's how they use their misconduct or incompetency and their damage definition. Just pointing out that it doesn't apply to our cases. Attachment 5 will show you that there's an order receiving funds from property owners, that's the misconduct. The order says, receiving funds from property owners for a code-compliant roof, installation, failing to install the roof materials properly, and failing at attempts to make corrections resulting in damages to the roof materials. So we go back to the issues that were found in the Arcadia report, the rust that occurred when they did try to make a correction. So there were multiple witnesses. There was in the reports, and we also had a witness that appeared who said that damage to the roof could void the warranty, the painting warranty that is on a metal roof. In the transcript, that came from same attachment number 18, Jeff Fuller from Hefferman, Holland, Morgan Architecture, said that the voided warranty by not properly installing the roof, and additionally, materials will not be warranted. Plus, they fastened through the plastic skylight, which could not be repaired. It would always be a leaking issue. Moving on to the restitution issue. Attachment 20, there's amount of financial loss suffered by the consumer in our code at 18-37E1. There was a mention by Attorney Alexander that restitution, which was the restitution included documents from Freeman and a settlement discussion. I would point out this is a quasi-judicial case. The rules of evidence do not apply. He's quoting directly from the rules of evidence. And additionally, any time that anything was introduced where Mr. Alexander was present, he had the opportunity to object to its introduction. And there were multiple times on the record where the board was instructed or advised, I should say advised, that they needed to give both parties the opportunity to object to any document that was being introduced. There are specific, if you look at attachment 18, page 116, it specifically asks if he has an objection to the documents being introduced. There were no objections. There were discussions had by Mr. Alexander, and in those discussions, his objection was to it was taking out of context, not to its admissibility. Additional documents that supported the restitution calculations. Attachment 23, the Arcadia, which was the engineering report that was provided by the victims, was $10,594.39. A financial loss they would not have incurred had the roof been properly installed. They also paid McCarthy Engineering for another report to evaluate of whether or not the roof could even be repaired at this point. If you could just, the old roof could be taken off and the same thing be put back on. So they paid $4,900 to McCarthy Engineering, who said it could not. Freeman provide at attachment number 10 within your record. Freeman provided an estimate for a re-roof, which was a very high dollar, and that's the document that he's objecting to. The board only considered $18,800 of that removal of the roof for the removal of the roof panels that would have to come off and able to. That was the panels, the panels that he put on, not anything else being removed. And then, in addition, there was $89,370 in receipts from the Freeman Roofing at attachment 12. It should be noted that the board went with the $89,300 calculation instead of the $70, and that was with the approval of the sextons. So those are the calculations that were involved. That's the evidence that supports each one of these. If there are any questions, we're open to questions.
Okay, board, Commissioner Bergosh.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for outlining that, and thank you for all the detailed backup that you provided us and the public as well. Getting back to the city versus county thing. So the city.
Jeff, 1 second. Mr. Alexander, if you might have a seat until I call you back up. Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. So I understand we have the Contractor Competency Board. I understand that Freeman Roofing is licensed through the county, but does the city not have a process for something like this happening in the city limits? I mean, 7 years on this board, I don't recall anything like this coming before us.
We have Jennifer here, and she's their assistant. She's going to know that area. I can tell you, in my experience, they don't have a contractor competency board. They are registered with us.
Well, okay.
So this is why it was before our board.
And I'm
even
not,
though-
and I'm not arguing it to say, we shouldn't do this. Of course, we're going to do it. They're all citizens of the county, right? Even if they live in the city, they pay taxes. It just seems to me that they have a lot of the same services we have that they have as well. Their own code enforcement, their own zoning, and their own laws and permitting. So I'm just wondering why they wouldn't have a mechanism that they could handle their issues within the city limits and not.
Because Jeff, we're the licensed authority for that. Because he's a registered. Had he been a state certified contractor, then, it wouldn't be there. But he's a local contractor, and he's a registered contractor versus state certified.
So there would be
And
no,
so,
there would be no way the city could do
The
it.
city doesn't issue out license for contractors. They take their test under Escambia County.
Okay. All right,
And they
fair
become-
enough. Thank you,
And they become a
Commissioner.
registered contractor.
And then the other question I have is I'm looking at the payment schedule and for the restitution, and would that amount, if the roof is not salvageable, according to the engineer's report, that $4,900 report that you referenced, what would they do with that money? Is the roof leaking right now, or have they fixed it to a point where it's at least stabilized? Is it leaking right now? We had a bunch of rain this past weekend. How much damage did they have?
That would be new evidence, and I wouldn't be able to present it.
Okay. Well, as of what we have right now, is the roof watertight? No? It's still leaking? Okay. All right, so will this amount be sufficient to, it sounds to me like they got to do a whole brand-new roof, and if that's going to be $166,000, I don't see that this amount is sufficient. So help me understand.
If I may.
Yeah.
We cannot calculate, it is not the responsibility of the contractor to pay for them to have a completely brand-new roof.
Sure.
This is only to cover the damages that were, the financial loss that was caused by his failure to follow the manufacturer's installation instructions. As far as what they're going to have to do is go all the way back down. They're going to have to go down to the purlins. They're going to have to go back, and there's some very large estimates, and the board chose not to follow those estimates. It was in their opinion that it would be inappropriate to allow them to get a brand new roof when that wasn't what they originally requested.
Okay. No, fair enough. I appreciate the questions and the answers. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And so you may or may not have the answer. So was this the initial permit pulled for a re-roof, or was there structural in the inception, or did they find structural problems after they tore off the roof or the panels?
Let me, if I can clarify, this was a roof over, so the panels still have not been removed. They roofed over another roof that was present, that's in the record. So as the structural evaluation by an engineer was never done.
So I'm just trying to figure out, maybe Mr. Freeman can help, how did they detect that they need to do engineering if it was just a re-roof or covering it up? Alton, go ahead.
Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, my name's James B. Freeman, Freeman Roofing, 4201 Auckland Road, Pace, Florida. The first thing she said was wrong was the fact we didn't get a, okay, I went down.
No, Mr. Freeman, I just want to get that because you're going to have a time to speak. I'm just actually dialoguing.
Okay, I
with
want to
our
answer
board.
about the permit. Now, we had permits on this job that was final. The in progress was checked after we done the job. It was approved. The final was approved until somebody said.
And Mr. Freeman, I think he's going to give you a chance. I mean, I guess my
Okay,
question, Mr. Freeman, 1 second, please.
They had the paperwork. If I needed, they have an engineer, they should have told
Okay,
me the city.
that's fine. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to continue to talk to the board, then let Mr. Freeman come back up. Because I was
Mr. Freeman, if you might have a seat.
Mr. Lister.
Could you ask me again?
Sorry.
I was wondering why we didn't detect that they would need engineering in the beginning, but now it was a cover-up. And so I'm just trying to get to the point of when did the city figure out they needed to have it engineered?
Mr. Jonathan Bilby was the one that requested that. He's the city building official.
Before the permit was pulled or after the permit was pulled?
After there was problems. And so the Florida Building Code allows a roof over a metal roof. It's not real popular, but it does allow that. And this particular manufacturer produces metal just for that. That's special type installation, everything. Florida Building Code says you have to go by the manufacturer's requirements for install. That's the code for how to do it. When it was identified that that was not done by Jonathan Bilby and his inspectors, they asked for an engineer, because the code does allow that you can get an engineer to sign off that says that what's there is sufficient, even though it may not meet the exact manufacturers. And as long as he signs off, he takes responsibility, obviously, but he is allowed to do that. And that's what Mr. Bilby said. The option is you can do this. And it was never, that was one of the things we've showed Mr. Freeman a lot of respect and tried for 8 months, longer than anything we normally do. And there was never an inspection report given to the city. The city was never able to say, okay, this is what to do based on an engineer's report. It was not per manufacturer's report or requirements. So it really put us in a hand-tied situation.
But you did have an affidavit from Mr. Freeman stating that it was installed correctly, or did he not sign that affidavit?
He did not sign an affidavit. He said in one of our meetings, and it's on the records, that it was not installed per manufacturer's requirements, but in his 47 years of business, he installed it properly, and it is installed properly. Mr. Bilby says if it's not by the manufacturer's requirements, it's not. And Mr. Bilby is based on the Florida Building Code.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, excuse me, if you want to look at the instructions, and I know that this is more, probably more than you wanted to do, but you'll find that at Exhibit 42, the manufacturer's instructions on this roof.
All right, thank you.
I have one last
Commissioner,
question.
yep.
Is there a separate civil litigation in this case that's been filed in the circuit court or the county court?
I know that there was a notice filed regarding the insufficiencies, but I don't know that there's a civil case pending.
Maybe he knows.
There is not currently.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Madam Counsel, Mr. Freeman did sign up to speak. Is it appropriate maybe to give him the podium now?
Sure, or defer to his counsel as
Okay.
what he'd like to present.
Yeah.
If I could just, if he is going to if he's going to give statements, all statements that we've taken from witnesses in our case have been sworn to. And if Mr. Freeman's going to testify, since we're not supposed to be taking testimony, that he be sworn.
I don't know. They signed up to speak, so whatever, Allison, what do you?
If the
whatever's
lawyer
appropriate.
is going to summarize the evidence or the testimony from below, I'm totally fine with that. If, hopefully, the board doesn't intend to take new testimony or new evidence, because you're supposed to be reviewing what came to you from below. If there is some need for Mr. Freeman to respond either to his attorney or to the board with something new, then I don't disagree that he should be sworn in.
Okay, I'm just saying they signed up to speak, so I'm just trying to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak, not take new testimony if we're not going to. So insert yourself appropriately. Do it, Mr. Alexander, then.
And we won't have any new testimony for the board today. I don't think procedurally that the board can consider that.
Okay.
And I don't really want to get it into a
Okay.
evidentiary hearing here when
All right,
we're
well,
not
you have the floor, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Board. Just a couple quick responses. I will say at the March 6, 2024 hearing, a document was circulated in email from Christy Hankins, Assistant County Attorney, regarding actual damages, and that was the one that I had read into the record. That was provided to the Board, to the Council for the Sextons, and to myself. So this was a specific damage calculation provision that was provided to the board and presumably considered by them. With respect to the use of the settlement communications, I disagree with the arguments made. We specifically argued against its use because it was settlement communications. We also argued, of course, that given the context of it being settlement communications, it wasn't proper to be used as evidence. That argument was also made. The same point, however, stands. The board ultimately saw evidence that it should not have seen. It used this evidence as evidence to calculate numbers that were due to the Sextons. It wasn't intended to be evidence for that. It wasn't presented as evidence, first of all, by Mr. Freeman, yet it was used as though it was evidence from Mr. Freeman. The use of confidential settlement communications in that way is prejudicial. It's clearly prejudicial to my client. We had the entire communication that was provided to the Sextons then presented to the board. Like I said, that was an offer made in compromise to try to resolve these issues. The board should never have seen it. The board certainly is not able to justify its damage valuations on that. As stated here, obviously, they did rely on that. A portion of their damage calculations was based on confidential settlement communications. That is improper. It should not have been permitted.
All right. Christy, what is the specific answer to that? You said that they didn't oppose any introduction of evidence to the hearing.
Okay. I have some notes and I was going to pull them up for you. When it comes to settlement, that's going to be in a civil case. Once again, that statute that was provided to you is one that comes from the Florida Evidence Code. It doesn't apply to quasi-judicial hearings. In addition to that, if there is no settlement, the purpose of that is to prevent it from coming in a liability question. At this issue, the liability had already been determined. He was responsible for what had happened, and we were just doing a calculation. While it was supposed to be a settlement, there was no settlement entered, and that is one of the things that takes it out of settlement paperwork. It was an offer on how much more he was going to charge them to repair the roof, to fix what he had done. It was a much larger number. I believe it was in the $123,000 range. Or 160 range, and so they took a small portion of that to determine what it would cost to take that amount off. And once again, if you don't object to something when it comes in, then it's in as evidence, and that's an evidentiary rule. You can't argue that something shouldn't come in after you've already allowed it in, and we're at the appellate stage. That's standard law.
Okay. Board, what's the pleasure now?
Is this there?
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Ideally, yeah.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the board, Contractor Competency Board, and that we impose the sanction that's been brought before us.
Is that moving A and B as recommended?
All right. Second from Commissioner Kohler. Any other discussion, board? Hearing none, please vote. All those in favor? Item passes 4-0 to uphold the decision from the Contractor Competency Board. Thank you, Ms. Hankins. Thank you, Alton. All right, board. That was the 903. Next item, Clerk and Comptroller's report. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I have 3 items on the consent agenda. The first one is acceptance of the TDT collections data from March. You'll see that there was a 3% increase over last year. The second is documents that are filed with the minutes, and the third is preparation of documents that we've filed. Thank you.
Move the clerk's report.
Thank you. Please vote. Item passes 4-0. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Horace?
Yes, sir. Good morning. We have the 9:15 public hearing concerning to review and adopt an ordinance amending the Design Standards Manual, Barrier Island Lighting Ordinance.
Board, sorry. Ms. Paulette, is this your item to speak on, the GMR 11 about the Barrier Island lighting? Yes. Yes, okay. All right, board, we do have a speaker. You're up, Ms. Paulette. Jeanette Paulette.
Yes. I'm here this morning hoping to appeal for a little sanity. First of all, I have a couple of questions on the ordinance to be sure I do understand it. It says that all new coastal construction on Perdido Key property, including redevelopment and substantial improvements. Does the substantial improvements part mean the existing buildings that are already there?
You have your time for your comments. We'll try to make a note of your questions and see if someone can address them.
Okay. Well, then my comments. I am the manager of Needle Rush Point on Perdido Key. I have been there since August of 2013, so I have gone through a number of these new ordinances regarding the mouse and the turtles and, okay. I'd been there a couple of years when, first of all, in the name of protecting the beach mouse, they came onto Perdido Key and they killed or relocated every four-legged predator. All the cats, foxes, coyotes. The unintended consequence of that, to protect the mouse, is we are overrun with giant rats. I am talking tens of thousands of rats. When you have 10,000 rats, the snakes come. One community down the street from me killed 23 copperheads on their property last summer alone. I had a guest beat a copperhead to death on my tennis courts. We have no legal means for fighting these rats. It's a common occurrence. We have snakes. I'm lucky. Needle Rush Point is 100 units, all wood, sitting on 14 acres of land. The only asphalt on my property is the driving lanes. I will tell you, I'm probably the greenest property there is. I've had to name the snakes. I call them all Bob. There is Bob, there is his wife Bobette, and the little Boblings. So when my phone blows up every day, Jeanette, there's a 6-foot snake on the pool deck. His name's Bob. He's not going to hurt you. Throw a rock at him, he'll run. The other calls I get, Jeanette, Bob was on the deck today. And then the rat came across the deck. And it wasn't a problem because Bob was chasing him. But when the rat ran in the lady's beach bag, the screaming started. Now you want me to put lights on my building to make the rats happier. I don't want rats in my building. Rats in a building are a health hazard. I'm looking at this ordinance and the things it's calling for. All the glass has to be replaced with tinted glass. All the lighting, including lighting in swimming pools, has to be wildlife friendly. Don't want rats in my pool. Don't want them on the pool deck. Sure as hell don't want them in the buildings. Already have that. It makes no sense. Yes, you have to take care of wildlife, but at some point you have to consider the humans. There is also a light, part of this ordinance says,
Ms. Paulette.
Section F,
Ms. Paulette,
televisions.
please hurry up.
I have to police televisions. Televisions have to be put so that they don't reflect outside of the building. Recreational amenities. I'm facing a lawsuit now because somebody got drunk and fell down and said it was because I don't have enough light. Other communities are the same thing. Security cameras won't work.
All right, Ms. Paulette, your time is up. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Board, that's our only speaker. What's the
Mr. Chairman,
comments? Yep.
I have a lot of concerns about this ordinance as well, not just the ones Ms. Paulette expressed, but one of the biggest issues that I have is this obviously impacts my district, Perdido Key District 1, but it also impacts District 4. And we don't have a representative. The governor has not appointed a representative for reasons no one understands, but we're short one man or woman, and this is going to be a very impactful ordinance for District 4 as well. So I would like to know from staff, what is the impetus for this being put on the agenda now, vice waiting until we have the full complement, including a District 4 board member? I mean, if it's something that could wait, I agree with Ms. Paulette. We should never be in the business of telling people where to put their TVs. That's ridiculous. I mean, help me understand why this is on the agenda now, vice when we have a full complement, including a District 4 board member.
So, Commissioner, make it easy. This can wait until there's a District 4 commissioner.
Then that's my motion. Thank you, Tim. Let's bring this back after November, because I don't think we're going to get one until then. And in the meantime, let's go through it with some common sense, right? We can't tell people we have to police where they put the TVs. That's out of control. That's ridiculous. That's my motion.
All right,
Yeah, I'll second it as well. And you're saying November, Jeff?
Yeah, because I don't think we're going to get, or sooner.
Why was it brought, that's fine, November. I got some rat problems, but not that type of rat problem. Why was it put on the agenda? I mean, what's the,
Commissioner, not for anything in particular. This started planning board a number of months ago. It's just been slowly going through a normal ordinance change process. It just happened to hit here, but it certainly, it certainly can wait until we have a full complement of the board.
well, Jeff, you were not the commissioner for Perdido, but we gave a couple $1 million for a white beach mouse, and so I mean, so I guess you got some of the black rats from now.
Well, and I will say, to Ms. Paulette's point, there was 7 or 8 construction trailers when I took over the district that had just been sitting there and decaying, and those, I went out there and I saw rats. It was disgusting. Thank you to code enforcement, because we lit a fire, and those are all gone now, but we still have a lot of issues out there we're trying to fix, but we shouldn't create issues when we're trying to fix issues. And
But Jeff, I would think that's a public health problem if she's inundated with that many rats. I mean, so what are we doing about it? I mean,
Well, I mean, the problem is we're protecting one rodent, right? And the unintended consequences, when you take the apex predator out, you're going to have, an abundance of the other ones that you don't like. So we have to be careful. We can't just kill the rats if it's something that's going to kill the beach mouse. So it's frustrating. And I don't know what the answer is, but I know meanwhile, I mean, we've got to follow
because
federal law.
we spend a heck of a lot of money on the beach mouse.
Oh, yes, we
Heck
do.
of a lot. Heck of a lot.
Heck of a lot.
Tons of it. Don't worry. And then
Because
ask
I was
anyone,
trying to get some money to get the rats out my district, and we were giving y'all money to put mouse in your district.
different species
So
of
now, I
rodents.
mean, and honestly, Jeff, I mean, we can sound facetious, but we're going to spend millions of dollars for white beach mouse, and now we're complaining about rats out there. I mean, that's counterproductive in my opinion. I mean, why? I mean, and so to me, we got to think those things out.
Yeah, I don't disagree. There's a lot of federal laws I don't understand, right? And that's one of them. We protect.
But when we spent that money, someone had to know there would be consequences if we are going to increase the beach mouse, and then it's going to create another rodent problem. I mean,
People don't
that
think
would not be
sometimes.
unique.
The legislature does it constantly. They go
But
back, they make a law, and then a year later they have to fix it,
Yeah,
right?
I think it's just
It happens
something
all
that
the
was
time.
that was dictated to us with very little thought about what the impact was going to be long term.
Yeah, so we don't need to exacerbate it. I think we're going to bring it back, and we're going to make some modifications to it. Thank you very much to you for coming out and expressing the.
Bring it back in November when it's freezing outside. They won't be so visible.
Item on the floor is to drop it. All those in favor?
No.
All right. Item passes 4-0. Horace?
The next item is with our GMO recommendation concerning a final plat approval for Gavin's Landing.
Speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, do not.
Okay, I move the item in
All those in favor? And this is A through D?
A through B.
All right. Please vote. Item passes 4-0. Horace?
The next item is final plat approval for Mallard's Landing.
Do we have any speakers, Mr. Chairman?
We do not have speakers until we get into the budget and finance. So,
Okay, I'll move the item forward.
all right. Please vote. Item passes 4-0. Horace?
The next item is final plat approval for Fall Chase at Pathstone Phase 4.
Do we have any speakers on this?
No.
I have one question, Horace. We're approving this, and as I looked at the diagrams in the backup, I don't see it tying into, I mean, it's self-contained. There's no,
Yes.
okay, all right.
This one is, yes.
If we have no speakers, then I will move the item forward, A through D.
All right. Is there a second? Please vote. Item passes 4-0. Horace?
Then we have the consent agenda.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Which one I have one? I got one more. Yeah.
Reappointment.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, my eyes. You have a reappointment for the BOA? Thank you.
Board?
At large, recommend reappointment
This,
for the
and this was
BOA.
the only person that put his name in the hat, is what my assumption is?
Yes.
We put this out there through CMR for applicants.
Did we have multiple, or was this the only guy? Is this the only one?
This appears to be the only respondent.
Okay, all right, move his name forward.
All right. Is there a second? All right. All those in favor? Item passes 4-0. And then we've got the consent agenda. Board, I'd entertain a motion.
Move the consent agenda.
Thank you. Please vote. I'm sorry, second. Thanks, Mike. Please vote. Item passes 4-0. Thank you, Horace. Drew, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 12 items on the technical public service consent agenda. There are no changes. There are no speakers.
All right.
Move the
Entertain a
technical,
motion.
move the technical
Thank
consent.
you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. Please vote. Administrator's technical public service consent passes unanimously. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 37 items on the budget finance consent agenda. There are no changes. Hold for speakers, card 2-20.
All right. And there is 2-13
13.
that needs to be held for me to abstain. I'd entertain a motion for the balance.
Move the balance.
Thank you. Please vote. Item, the balance of the budget and finance passes 4-0. Item 13. I, Stephen Berry, hereby disclose on May 20, 2024, a measure came before my agency which inured to the special gain or loss of Ryan Shavers. The measure before my agency and the nature of my conflicting interest in the measure is as follows. Escambia County Board of County Commissioners meeting May 20, 2024, County Administrator's Report, Item 2-13, recommendation concerning a change order for Shavers Construction, Contract PD 2324-0.025 for the Waste Services Perdido Landfill, presents a conflict of interest pursuant to Statute 112.3143 Florida statutes, where the appearance of a conflict of interest pursuant to Statute 286.012 Florida statutes, because Ryan Shavers, principal of Shavers Construction, is my client. I'd entertain a motion for the item.
I'll move item 2-13 in the
Thank you.
affirmative.
Second. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. Please vote. All those in favor? Any dissenting? Any abstentions? Myself. Item passes 3-0 with Commissioner Berry abstaining. Mr. Administrator.
Car 2-20, Pamela Wyrick.
Good
Good morning. Can you pull it down? Sure.
Good morning. The first thing I wanted to say is time has lapsed, but the prayer that was opened today, it really touched my heart because my husband and I pray that in the morning and we pray it at night, and that really meant a lot to us. That was an awesome prayer. My name is Pamela Wyrick, and I live at 8902 Mars Drive, Pensacola 32507. Good morning. We would like to thank our commissioners, engineers, and those who have been with us on our journey, to say thank you to the 2 engineers who brought sandbags in a torrential rainstorm to hopefully, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm legally blind, I'm sorry. For those who have been with us on our journey for the 3 years, the Flood Defender family and Chris Kerb, to express our deepest gratitude to the 2 engineers who came in a torrential downpour, brought us sandbags, placed to protect our new Graceland shed. From the first time we spoke, we were seeking help and an encouragement of our dilemma. Our appreciation for putting in the time, research, meetings that resulted in Weller on today's agenda for the construction contract award. That is a plan that is now going forward. These words of appreciation are sincere. We want to point out our issues began from the first groundbreaking with the days of truckloads of dirt. Not a pad yet. Rain began, extreme mud flowing from entrance of Schooner Landing, facing our home, backyard, and our front yard. Then more truckloads of dirt to replace what was washed onto Weller, our ditch in our backyard. As I point out, I videoed Lake Weller from Schooner Landing entrance to Gulf Beach Highway, sent it to Channel 3. There's no relief for 3 years. We hope we have met so many committed engineers who have been kind, even would call us or stop by to check on us. To Commissioner Mike Kohler, Chris Kerb, and all the encouragement from our Flood Defender family. Thank you for allowing us the time to speak.
Thank you.
Chris Kerr.
Yeah, Pam and Ricky, dealing with some flooding, and it's basically associated with the Schooners Landing subdivision that got built. Sometimes when we have developments get approved through development review process, we have existing roadways that basically don't have a very good drainage system. And when we build these subdivisions, they end up causing problems, and that's basically what this situation is. One of the reasons I spoke about drainage impact fees this morning is, you know, this is coming out of your discretionary funds to fund this Weller Avenue project to fix a problem. And it's a problem basically impacted by development. Sometimes development actually resolves problems versus exacerbating those flooding problems. But in this case, there was a need, and the county came through, and I rise in support of that. This is not a fix-all, though. It's a small project. If you go from Mars Drive back toward Gulf Beach Highway, there's drainage issues there all the way across Gulf Beach Highway to the south, where you have the ditch runs over to Granger, Gerald, and Weller Avenue on the south side of Gulf Beach Highways. There's drainage issues over there as well. So if you raised your drainage impact fees incrementally, you might have more funding to fix these types of impacts. So that's basically what I want to throw my 2 cents in for. Thank you.
That concludes the speakers, Mr. Chairman. Car 2-20.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to move Car 224. Thank you.
All right, is there a second? All right, please vote. Item passes 4-0. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Car 3-1 is a recommendation concerning a senior staff selection. I'd like to ask Ms. Nikki Powell and her husband and her co-workers and her staff if they'd like to come up. Mr. Chairman, Board, I'm extremely excited to announce as my selection for Permanent Human Resources Director, Ms. Nikki Powell. She does a fantastic job. She's been in the role for a year, but even prior to that, she's had a good reputation throughout the county. Many union negotiation sessions where she's kept me on track. But she's done a great job. She's a great communicator. She's put some training in place. But I think she's just well respected, been in the organization, around the organization quite a few years. And Nikki, I appreciate you, and I'm happy to announce you as my Human Resources Director. Congratulations. And we will need a motion in a second, please.
I move we affirm Wes's selection of Nikki Powell as Director of Human Resources.
I'll second her.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Any more discussion? All right, please vote. Item passes 4-0. Congratulations. Ms. Powell, please, you're welcome to say a word.
Thank you. I just want to say real quick, when I was asked to take the role as interim, I was surprised, honored, humbled. The support from Mr. Moreno, Ms. Bowers, Mr. Hall, County Attorney's Office, fellow directors has just been overwhelming. The unwavering support of my family, my husband and my mom who are here with me today, and the Human Resources Department who welcomed me with open arms. I could not do this without them. We plan to maintain a fair and consistent business model in the Human Resources Department as we update policies and streamline procedures. And I thank you today for your vote of confidence in my ability to do the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Mr. Chairman, Car 3-2 is a discussion item involving OLS 8. There are 4 speakers signed up to speak. If you want to hear them first.
Yes.
Teresa Blackwell.
Teresa Blackwell. I live in Beulah. I want to go over a few red lines for me on OLF 8 on the offers. We have the offer from Chavers and Moe. I don't believe they have the experience to do this, so I'm not going to spend much time on that. The Beulah Town Center offer, Hemmer and Partners, and then we have a mystery new one, apparently imminent, which I have no idea about that one. So my first red line is that we have a DPZ master plan and a DPZ design code. 800 of us participated in developing that plan. It was hard fought over many years, and Navy Federal paid $1.4 million for that plan. It is part of our land development code. Your promise to us that you will carry that plan out. The design code is particularly critical to the outcome. Even if some zoning needs to change, there's a little more flex there, the design code needs to be followed. That's what will ensure that it is a quality place, not just a nice place, you know, like our nicest places in Beulah, but a place that is above that and will attract other business and everything else. On the zoning, though, I will say I don't want encroachment on the forest and grass buffer on the west. That needs to still be public space with some grass, open space where we can have events. You want to put a little bit of residential along the edge in the development, that might be all right. My red line number 2, connectivity. I've heard you talking about just having one road. One road through the middle of that is going to dump all the traffic into one spot, maybe right across the street from where the commissioner for our district lives. So that is not a good idea. You need at least another connector, and they both need to go north to south. You can't build a wall on the south side, and it's just not going to be a good way to develop. You will not get the commercial development you want up there until we get a new interchange if you do that. And in the meantime, even with those connector roads, do you want 18-wheelers heading down through the town center through one exit? Just not good planning. Finally, the planning director in Lake Wales is in the midst of creating a great master plan for the entire city. He told me that the developers told him, there's no way we can follow, in other places, that no way we can use that design code, no way we can do that zoning, but then they did. So I have no doubt that Mr. Hemmer and partners could do the same. With the current offer, I have no doubt they do something nice, but we need to hold them to the very best we could have. What's good for the people of Beulah will be good for the county, will be good for Navy Federal, will result in the most successful and profitable development for all of us. So we need to stick to that. And I am very encouraged by the analysis of your
Teresa,
staff.
your time's up.
I am toward the end of my sentence.
Well,
Thank
your
you.
time is up, thanks.
Pardon me? Thank you.
That's good, your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have Fred Hemmer and Meredith Bush. I don't know if they want to present jointly or just here for questions. I'm not sure.
Good morning. Fred Hemmer, 207 East Intendencia Street. As you know, we submitted another offer on Friday, and we addressed, I think, all the issues that the county staff had come up with. Jeff, I saw publicly you had made some comments a little frustrated that we put back some of the things in the one contract that the county had prepared. And quite frankly, the reason that happened is we never got a chance to talk with everybody. When we realized that Allison was going on vacation, I said to Will Dunaway, we need to get this back to them. We can't wait for discussion. And with Allison gone, so we got that document out literally on Thursday before she left. And so that's why some of those were in there. We've gone back and talking with Will, have taken a lot of those out. So I do want to address one thing I saw in the agenda package today, and that was a letter from Mr. Moorhead. And I guess it was sort of addressing or suggesting that we don't have the local connections that the other group does. I want to state some facts. I brought more than $10 million of capital into this county since 2013 when we started the One Big Development. So we have a major investment here. I have lived here since 2014 after spending a couple hundred nights in hotels from 2010 to 2014. So I've maintained a residence since 2014. Yes, I go back and forth to St. Petersburg. I've maintained residence in both places, but in the last 10 years, more than 50% of my time is up here. I have two partners who handle all the business in St. Petersburg. The other thing is because of the relationship up here, I have brought some of our local consultants, architects down to the projects in St. Petersburg. And I think it's roughly, in the last 3 or 4 years, about $5 million has come from us towards your local professionals here working on our projects down there. The last thing I want to say about our local connection is, as you all know, we own the largest piece of entitled land in the county, 1,500 acres in Cantonment. We have a long project there. We are committed to this county. Metro Development, who is our partner on OLF8, we're in the negotiations, signing the documents that they will be our partner up in Cantonment also. So our group has a major investment here and a major time commitment here. So that's all I want to say. I'll be available to answer any questions you may have, on the contract itself. I know we have the one big issue, one big difference, and I know that Meredith may address that. Thank you.
Good morning, Meredith Bush, 125 East Intenzia. I'm with Clark Partington. Just a couple points. As Mr. Hemmer stated, we have submitted an updated red line agreement. We are committed to working with staff to put forward a plan that meets the spirit of the DPZ plan while also acknowledging the realities of the county retained industrial portion. In the new agreement, there is a $250,000 deposit that would go hard upon approval of a preliminary site plan. That would incorporate, again, the spirit of the DPZ plan, but there are some changes needed, some modifications to the zoning. So we're happy to address any questions, but look forward to working with the county to make this project happen.
Final speaker, Steve Moorhead.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners, Steve Moorhead, Moorhead Law Group, and I have the 127 Palafox Place, and I have the pleasure of representing Cliff Moe and Ryan Shavers, as you know. We've learned through this process that there are 4 things that you're looking for. One is you want adherence to the DPZ plan, and that's codified. Any changes from that, we'd have to come back to you and ask for. The town center is something that we're interested in seeing how all that's going to work, and we're excited about that part of it. As far as the local involvement, that'd be number 2. Our guys are born and raised in Pensacola. Their money is going to be held in local banks. All the financing will be here locally. All the design team will be local. Number 3, timeframes. You've been looking for tight timeframes, not something that's indefinite. And man, we've been aggressive with that. We did a due diligence period of 6 months. Our money goes completely hard, $250,000. At that point, we have to close this thing in 2 years or we lose $650,000. And then you want some hard money, and I've just gone over what that is. It's $250,000 in 6 months, $25,000 a month until we get the thing closed. So I know Mr. Hemmer's worked very hard on this project. If he's not able to meet the county's needs, we are here and looking forward to an opportunity to negotiate with staff. Thank you.
All right, Board, that's all the speakers that we have. Obviously, they have kind of stayed up front if y'all have questions for them. If I had a conversation with the Madam Council yesterday, if the eventual discussion is going to result in a vote about either agreement or anything formal, any formal action taken by the board, I will be having to abstain. The way it's agended, it is somewhat of a binary discussion in that to go forward with to formalize a vote and move forward with something with either group is to either support or go against somebody that I have a conflict with, which is Mr. Shavers. So just before we get too far in the discussion, and so that none of y'all are surprised by that item, by that fact, if we get to the point of voting something formally, then I would be abstaining from any vote that pertains to the item today because of the way it's agended, kind of being got option 1, option 2, and if to move forward with one option is to either move forward with someone that I have a conflict with, or to move forward with the other item is to move forward in objection to someone that I have a conflict with, which she's advising that I abstain from both. So, but we'd open up for discussion. Commissioner May, your light's on, or Commissioner Prakash, however y'all want to begin.
Mr. Chairman, are there only 2 proposals? I did hear Teresa say there was a third one. Is there a third proposal?
I'm not aware of that, Commissioner May. I'm not sure.
Okay. I didn't know. I just heard her say that. So.
Yeah, I heard that as well. I'm not sure. Commissioner Prakash?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, my understanding, and I will have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with a group that includes 2 local persons and a group out of Alabama. Whether or not they're going to bring something, I don't know. I'm told they will. But right now, we got to deal with what's in front of us, not what might happen tomorrow. So I just have a couple of questions for both of the proposals. And first, I want to say to Fred Hemmer, thank you for going back and making those changes. Thank you for the conversation and the detailed explanation about what needed to be changed, and I understand the reasons for that. As I look at what is in front of me from our attorney, I do see that there's still continuing contract objectionable terms, and I'm curious about what that is, because so far as I could tell, Madam Attorney, they have made the changes that we were, the statutorily prohibited things that were in there, those have been taken out. So what,
So respectfully, there are
Yes.
several items where they have indicated that the terms would be negotiable.
Sure.
And those, we have not negotiated out those terms. We are awaiting board direction. I think Mr. Moreno and I are awaiting you guys to kind of lead us.
okay, let's start with that. So one of them is the agreement contains several provisions that require the county to indemnify and hold Beulah Town Center harmless and pay its attorney fees in the event of a default, breach, or other dispute by the county. I mean, that seems reasonable to me. If we delay them, that would be our fault. So I'd like to know what is, I mean,
I can say it's going to be very difficult to try to hash out the specific
I
wording
know it's going to,
of a
but if we don't do
contract
it
here on
now,
the
it's
floor.
never going to happen. We're playing ping pong like Forrest Gump. It's time.
Why don't we just put it on a workshop?
Well, we could do that, or we could just make this a quick workshop, but I'd like the answer to the question. So you were saying, Madam Attorney?
I mean, I'm certainly going to, I'm going to certainly have concerns with any provision where the county's indemnifying them, but
Well,
I mean,
is that not a standard? Okay, so
board
the
has
seller, if we do something, help me understand this, we do something that prevents them from closing, we do it purposely, is that not a standard provision that the seller would have some culpability there? Is that not standard?
I don't disagree that if we hold up somebody that there could be a problem.
Okay, so let's
but-
move to the next one, because I think we can overcome that. I think that's pretty common sense. Beulah Town Center requires the remedy of specific performance for breach, default, or otherwise refusing to pursue its obligations in the agreement. Again, that's if we don't do what we
But
say we're
Commissioner, I
going to
will
do.
tell you, in every instance, I'm going to advise you, do not ever allow specific performance as a remedy against the public, against the county.
Well,
That's
and I
it.
understand that's your position, but I mean, common sense dictates that these contracts are written all the time between entities, and there's responsibilities on both sides. And if they're asking for some protection here, I think it's reasonable. In other words, none of that would be triggered unless we did something. We did something in breach of the contract. That seems pretty, okay, so let's move to the next one. The county would be required to pay all of Beulah Town Center's actual damages if the county doesn't close. I mean, that, to me, that makes sense. If we somehow prevented this from closing, I think we would owe them. Do you disagree with that?
The board certainly has the right to go against legal advice, but in every instance, we're going to advise you all to
Sure.
try to avoid those types of terms being imposed against
Well,
them.
we're never going to get a buyer that's going to put $25 million into something if there's nothing, right? Fred, would you sign something for $25 million if there was no protection whatsoever for you? Yeah, of course. And that we'll be on the 9th deal, and the 10th, and the 11th, and the 12th, and the 13th. There's no perfect deal, guys. There is no perfect deal. What else? Okay, so warranties of title, indemnification, specific performance, and damages. What were your issues with the damages, Madam Attorney?
First of all, they still are able to get virtually all of their earnest money back. Specific performance is still included as a possible remedy.
They get their earnest money back if we commit a breach of this contract.
They still get most of it back regardless.
Jeff, I don't think that that's true. I mean, this is not something that's either, that's relative to one offer versus the other. I'm not going to agree to these terms in anyone's offer.
Right.
These are. We're in a similar situation that we were last year. In my opinion, the focus of us moving forward with an agreement, with a deal at OLF8, is going to come down more to terms than it is just the top line number. I mean, the top line number for the agreement could be $100 million. If we're not going to get the $100 million, it doesn't make any difference what the top number is.
disagree with that.
And those terms that are in there, I'm not going to agree to that language being in the contract, no matter who we're selling to. Those are not things that are, those are not standard terms in real estate contracts on our side of it. And I don't believe that that's going to be, the case with any buyer. It's not been the case with other buyers of property from sellers. You don't see these terms and languages between two parties.
I will respectfully disagree with you, Commissioner Berry, because I've owned commercial property and sold it and bought it, and I've seen these contracts. And I think if there's not something in there that stipulates the buyer's responsibility and the seller's responsibility, and if you go all the way through and at the end the seller says, well, you know, I'm not going to do it, there has to be a remedy. There has to be a remedy for the people.
That's not the only remedy that's in the language that's in the contract, though.
Okay.
That's my problem. That's not the only. I agree with what you're saying. If the board simply decided discretionarily at the end, we don't want to close with you,
Yeah.
I agree with you. That's not the terms that the agreement dictates. Acknowledging the issues that we have with the terms is not the same as changing the terms in the contract. So the terms have been acknowledged. We acknowledge that, you know, it's written in there. We acknowledge that you have an issue with this. Okay, well, what is your proposal for the change in the terms to address that concern? And I haven't seen those that are acceptable. What you're saying is exactly true, Jeff. I agree with that. If we just made a decision after signing a contract, we don't want to close anymore because we don't like you. We've decided we don't like the development that you're going to do, whatever the case may be. They should have a remedy for that. That's not the language that exists in the contract that we've been proposed, nor is it language that exists in what they've put forward. And we still have completely undetermined timelines to close. We can't control, we can control our response times. We can control how we're going to work a proposed project through DRC or through the board for future land use changes or rezonings or those kind of, we can control that. We can't control when things are submitted to us. We can't control when they ask for something. By moving forward with something that's going to be closed at the receipt of something else, then with no other language in there about when they're going to make submittals, when are they going to have submittals to us? That we could be sitting here 3 years from now, basically signing a contract, committing ourselves to a top-line number, and allowing our partner in this contract to go out there and shop the rest of the development around to see what they can get done before they make any submittals, and we could be sitting here 3 years from now. In my opinion, we're not going to regret the top-line number, whatever we do, nearly as much as as we would regret the language that we allow to be in the contract, and we sit here 2 years from now, 3 years from now, lamenting with no ability to change at that time, saying, you know what, I wish we wouldn't have agreed to that just to try to get something moving forward.
Well, I mean, I hear your concerns, Stephen, and I guess I would say, I mean, as I see here, they've got a 1 year close, 1 year.
But that's not exactly true.
And the other offer has an 8-month total for close, 6 months inspection, 2 months to close, 8 months. 8 months versus 1 year. I don't think
But those aren't really timelines, though, Jeff. That's a hypothetical timeline. The timeline to actually get paid is upon receipt of this, upon receipt of entitlements, upon receipt of other things that don't just depend on action by us, that depends on action by them. So that gives them the ultimate control of when the property is going to close. That 1 year timeline might as well not even be in there.
And what I would say to that is, Commissioner Berry, I don't think they want to tie up money.
They're not tying up any money.
No, I disagree with you.
This is not any, no, with regard to a purchase price, $25,000, they're not tying up any money to control. That's the money they have tied up in a contract to control 290 acres.
Right.
And that's just saying hypothetically that 25,000 is at risk, which I don't think it is, but let's just say that 25,000 is at risk. Then that's basically an open-ended deal to say we'll close when we receive something, but that receipt of what we need is based on the timeline that we make a submittal to you. What is their motivation? They don't have a carrying cost. This is okay. So this is what I'm saying. When you see, let's just pick something we acted on today. You had Pathstone of phase at Fall Chase or Pathstone Fall Chase. you have a developer in there that's, I presume, been trying to push through DRC, been trying to push through development, been trying to push through inspections, been trying to push to get the final plat on the agenda for today. Because now they can start to, pull permits and get COs and those kind of things. That's a big deal. Because they have, I don't remember how big this phase is. They have millions of dollars of infrastructure money tied up in it. Even for a publicly traded company, there's a carrying cost to them doing that. So they have a motivation to try to get that final plat on our agenda as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
If we enter into a contract that has this language in it, they have no motivation to move quickly when they control the property. Once we enter the contract, they control the property. They have no carrying cost during that time with us. They, maybe they're spending money with engineers and architects and attorneys, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We don't control whether they are or not. And we can't control when they make submittals. We can't control, so maybe they make a submittal and they get redlined, they get comments back from DRC about, I don't know, say there's 4 pages of red lines. When do they respond to those? Maybe they don't like the comments. I mean,
I think all those.
And this is the case of whether this is them, whether it's Steve's group. We haven't seen a proposed contract from Steve's group.
No,
But
we haven't.
if there's language in there like that, I would never move forward with that either.
Again, and I understand your concern, Stephen, and I hear what you're saying, but I would say a couple things that we're missing. Number one, these guys, they get a deal with us, they get a contract, congratulations. Now they've got to go to work and start spending money. The master plan's pretty, lots of pretty pictures, but it's not engineered. We need storm water engineering. They're going to have to build a $2 to $3 million boulevard. They're going to have to start engaging professionals. To say that they're not going to have any investment in it is just wrong. They're going to have a tremendous investment in it, especially if the clock's ticking. A year goes by like that. They also know that the cost of borrowing money has doubled over the last year. They don't know what's coming. This war in Ukraine could rile the markets. I don't think they're going to sit on their hands. I mean, I don't think they make any money sitting on their hands. And, to say that they would incur no cost, I just would.
They would incur the costs at their own discretion.
Well, sure.
I mean, not.
But I mean, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. I mean, if we're entering into a transaction with them, we know that to me, that's an illustration of good faith. Now, if they did nothing, if I don't see anyone out on that field for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, I mean, yeah.
But what are we going to be able to do about it?
Well, I think
You would be able to do nothing about it if they did that.
Well, I think there's terminology in this contract as it sits where we could put some leverage on them.
I don't think so, Jeff.
Well, then I would
see the
like to say
language in
this.
there.
Why have we not answered that? Why, Madam Attorney, what language could we insert that would put leverage on them? I mean, well, I definitely want to hear from them as well, because I think it's a one-way conversation. But look, this is not me going to bat for Fred Hemmer or for Will Dunaway or for Steve Moorhead. There are other people watching this. They've watched the previous 7 deals, Evanesce, right? There's never going to be a perfect contract. It's not going to be perfect. Right now, we owe $14.6 million on that property. If we do things right, we're about to cash that in and get $10 million that we can all put for infrastructure. But perfection, we're never going to have perfection. There will never be a perfect contract. These guys have shown a willingness. Just look at what they've come back with. They had things in there that were outrageous, and they pulled them. So what language would we put in there, Allison, that would address Steve's concerns? I mean, when else are we going to do it?
If it is the board's direction to get with Mr. Dunaway, we have proposed language. Most of it has been that would address these issues. The idea of this floating or indeterminate closing date, because they want all of these assurances prior to the closing date being triggered. So we have provided language. It's gone back to them twice where we have tried to rein that in so that there is a definitive closing date, so that the board knows when it's going to get its money. That language has been stricken now twice. So we can certainly go back to him following this board discussion.
Sure.
To try to reinsert that and in conjunction with these other comments that I know came in on Friday from Mr. Hemmer's group, that things that they're willing to do or willing to negotiate. If that's the board's direction, I'll sit down with them. We have provided that language previously. It has been removed by them in an editing process.
Yeah, my understanding is they've tried to have a meeting They've tried and called, and it's been a difficult proposition, but, and that's just me, you know.
I'm right here.
Well-
Their will is welcome at any day in my office.
Okay, so my understanding is there's some heavy commercial light industrial in the current 290-acre footprint, along with some public stuff. That's what they're trying to get fixed. That's my understanding. Yeah, Will, would you come forward, please? So, I mean, it's not like they're doing a wholesale change of the master plan, but if they don't have a shot at the 250 acres up north, they, understandably, they want to have something built there. Obviously, if we left the commercial stuff in the southern portion, we know the Live Local Act allows them to build 6-story affordable housing on that if they wanted to, without us even having a say. That's something that we know. So I understand that change, and I understand the change from the public. Will, what to the question of the submittal timelines going back, what would be your guys' objection to that? I hear what Stephen Barry's saying. I don't disagree with him. What would be your objection to that? Some language.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, if I may. Let me first point out to Madam Council's point, we did have a good meeting with staff. Wes had a good meeting with, no, sir, this was a couple of weeks ago. We did a Zoom meeting. And during that meeting, we very clearly went over the zoning as it existed today. And there is a detailed memo that I provided that hopefully you have a copy of. It lays out what your current zoning is, and that is by ordinance, you put in place the DPZ master plan, and you selected the areas for zoning that were discussed in that plan. Your staff has indicated, based on the negotiations and where we are here, now you are retaining a good portion of the OLF 8 parcel. You, the county, are retaining that, and you are going to be the developer of the light industrial on the north. So the integration of that plan is different than it was when you put it in place a couple of years ago. So that zoning calls for a major boulevard, for instance. It calls for the stormwater plan. And your staff and I and our team have worked and talked about what that does require. And it does require coming back to you and you making changes to that existing ordinance and those zoning. The difficulty here is we're, of course, negotiating with you for a plan and a sale that we actually can't build right now because it's a different zoning process. That's why we have talked about the master development plan, which your staff encouraged and which we have been trying to outline and how that goes. Let me just address, in the actual document, we do have in paragraph 4, we have a very detailed issue discussion of closing. And it does give a 12-month period by which there can be no more extensions. So it can't go on forever. So that's in paragraph 4.
Yeah, but what if you say at 12 months, okay, we don't want to do the deal, then what do we get?
The initial deposit of $25,000.
Okay, yeah, well,
right. So
that needs to be fixed.
Then you go to the paragraph 8, in which you have it broken down into 8.1 and 8.2. This is where we're talking about the cooperation on developing the master plan, which would come forward. And it says in 8.2 that within 30 days, we would put together a schedule and a benchmark for the timeframes. In 8.3, it says within 90 days, we shall deliver to the county a site plan, which will move forward. That is the document which would move us towards a development plan, which we would hope and bring back to you to put in place to be able to put the zoning classifications that we can build in place. So those dates are in there. Again,
So, Will,
if there are different dates, we could
explain to the board what circumstances where you would not close within 12 months?
If the existing zoning was not, the existing zoning as it is today is not buildable under the plan that we're negotiating. That is a negotiation for a residential and mixed use south, because currently it's light industrial and civic, which requires only governmental buildings or allows only governmental buildings.
How long would it
You're going to, one second, Jeff. So you're going to include in the contract that the county would sign that the only terms, the only The only reason that you wouldn't close within 12 months, the only circumstances that would go beyond 12 months is the lack of the zoning change that the board would agree to. The zoning change is the only circumstance you would not close within 12 months.
I can't represent that to you standing at the podium here today, Commissioner, because
That's what my colleague is saying, is asking, and I'm saying I don't think that's true. You're saying you can't say that. I don't, and that's not what the contract says. I agree with you.
well, that's why the contract, there are a lot of details with regards to what the development plan would look like that are not included in the PSA. And the way we try to address that is through the development of a master plan. You currently are selling property that you do not expect to be developed in the way that you have it zoned. I mean, that's what we are negotiating with, and that's the difficulty that we have. So if you were to go out and put in place zoning for mixed-use retail and those kinds of things, then you might have a different product. But the product that you have right now
All right, Will,
is
what was y'all's takeaway from the discussion that was had about the board going ahead and taking some action, given the fact that since we adopted the master plan, we've indicated the notion to hold back the 250 acres, and we do have acreage related to discussion with school board, for a school there. What was y'all's opinion and your feedback about maybe having the board go ahead and make the changes that are clearly necessary to the master plan now first? What was your take on that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, we certainly don't control the county's actions and with regard to this, and we're not trying to contract away. In fact, we cannot contract for you for a specific zoning. That would be illegal. That's why we are talking about this master development plan.
But I'm saying, what was so the board has taken action formally to hold back 250 acres of a northern half that, we do. I mean, somebody needs to put a pencil to a paper and say, this is specifically what that's going, where
Correct.
that delineation is going to be. And then, maybe identify the acreage for the school board or whatever. And then, the board has given an indication for the 290 acres on the, the southern half that our intent is retail, commercial, and, the mixed-use residential in the northern portion of that southern half.
Correct.
And that's not what's on the master plan currently.
That is correct.
That's not how it's laid out currently. What was, just conversationally, what was your feelings to having the board go and make those changes to the master plan to more reflect the discussions that we've had over the last year as a board?
Well, Mr. Chairman, your staff looks to you for the guidance on those types of issues. I don't believe staff is prepared to bring forward a plan to you that would move forward with that while you are actively negotiating on this contract. And if I can remind you, you agreed in November to an LOI with my client to enter into the negotiations. And we have now produced 4 or 5, I've lost count, reiterations of the PSA. Each time we have heard and addressed a specific concern. Not every concern. There are some issues that can be negotiating, and there are some issues that are, quite frankly, undefined between our situation as we sit here today and your staff, because there has not been the type of due diligence that would be required to come back with a specific site plan, which would then be that document we would bring forth to have you put in place.
So the language that Allison, I mean, some of that language that's been submitted to you multiple times that's been completely deleted. It's not been proposed to be edited. It's just been deleted from the responses. What's the rationale for that?
Because it's actually contemplating that we're buying the property without knowing what we can build on it. And the developer, my client, cannot put that type of money at risk when he does not know, they do not know what they can do on it. For instance, right now, the majority of the property, were they to own it, could not be developed for what you believe they are supposed to do, and that is mixed use and retail. A majority of it is civic, upon which only a government building can be built. Another large portion is in light industrial, of which you have retained the ability to have that. And then again, there are other details about the stormwater, the boulevard, and other.
So, Jeff, this is one of this, after they did meet 2 weeks ago, or whenever it was, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, you know, Wes, you know, kind of came back to me, asked him how they had the conversation went. He said, well, that's a legitimate point. It's a legitimate point. Maybe that's more indicative of the fact that maybe we're not ready to execute a contract with someone with so many of those things undetermined. Maybe the more appropriate action for the board is because I believe in the retail, commercial, and the residential stuff on the northern part of it. I don't really care for that much, but it's part of it, so that's okay. But if that's what we foresee for the 290 acres, for this 290 that we're talking about, why don't we take the action? Because I think that Wes and our people can put those changes in place that reflect the board's intent.
Yes.
And let the board go ahead and take action that delineates the 250 on the north side. It delineates the school board, whatever we're going to do with them. And then it outlines the 290 for retail, commercial, and then this, you know, the mixed use on the north part of it, or the you know, the multifamily, whatever that is. But it indicates on the master plan what we actually have, where we've morphed to the product we want on the ground. And then we're not entering into a contract with so much ambiguity at the onset.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, Stephen, and I think that's probably where we have to go. Otherwise, we'll never get a contract. We'll never get a contract. But let me ask Will this question. So what Steve said is what I've been kind of thinking as this meeting has dragged on. If we unilaterally make the change and go back and rezone those civic areas and that one, there's HCLI within the 290 acres, is that right, Fred? Or is there none?
No, so your zoning now on your ordinance, it has totally newly created Z zones, so they're specific only to this piece of parcel, this property.
What I'm saying is in your 290 acre portion, Fred, we had a discussion and you said the two non-starters were the civic, and I understand that, and you said there was a HCLI or a
light industrial.
Light industrial.
Yes.
And that's within the 290 acres. So that needs to go back and be allowed to be made residential.
Yes, sir, and that's what we're trying to contemplate.
Or mixed use.
Retail,
come on,
commercial, mixed use.
because we're making some progress here. It's slow. It's like a snail race, but that's okay.
And
For
Commissioner,
Fred,
that's what we're trying to accomplish with the master plan, because the highest and best use of a property owner would be to develop their own property.
Yeah.
But from your development, we were looking to be able to present to you a site plan, a master site plan for what we could build for the price that we were offering.
Yeah,
And
no.
that you would then put that in place.
But
If
wouldn't
you're
that-
going to develop it, that's a whole different situation.
Will, wouldn't that be better if what you're proposing matches what's on the ground? What's the future land use and the zoning that's on the ground? Wouldn't that be a more appropriate time? Because at that point in time, you know what you're going to be able to do.
Well, but I'm not sure y'all know what you want, because the what's in place, I don't say that facetiously or to be, it's just that you put in place the ordinance that is existing now. And that was a very detailed, wholesale change to the way you operate normally. This was an overlay of a very detailed plan. And that plan has now
And then
moved away from.
9 months ago, we pretty unilaterally pulled out 250 acres for economic development. I mean, as a board, I mean, that was sometime last summer we did that.
Yes, and that's what we've been negotiating with you on, the idea that you want to access your property from Frank Reeder, not from 9 Mile, and the civic area, which is only governmental lands, would come back into retail, residential. Those are the kinds of things. That's the kind of site plan that due diligence would allow for us to put together and bring back to you, and either you could accept it or you could reject it.
Yeah, but then we never close. We get back to his point that it never closes and you guys have nothing at risk. I get that. Stephen, I think you're onto something. I think you're going to have support. I think we get the zoning sorted out. That way, okay, well, Fred, did you want to talk? Okay, come on up. You and I had a talk, and you said it was the commercial zoning and the civic. If we make that change right now, that way we don't have to be under contract.
Yeah, but the question is, what would you change it to? I
Well-
don't think you know what you want to change it to.
I think-
We don't know what it should be changed to. That's what we want the 90 days. Metro Development will jump all over this and come up with a plan that works. We have to have the right synergy.
Sure.
Between, it has to be laid out, the commercial, the retail, the residential, traffic ways, bike lanes, all that has to be thought out well by professionals. And not taking anything against you guys up there, but that's not your business. It's not my business. That's why we brought a company like Metro Development who knows how to do that. And they've made the commitment to get it back to you in 90 days.
All right, the first thing that is our business is the 250 acres and addressing the school board issue. And we have not done that yet. So I think that at a minimum, I think that's a starting point. And then removing, if we're retaining the northern portion for light industrial, there's no reason to have light industrial in the southern
Exactly.
portion. So,
Yeah.
I think delineating the 250 acres, we should be able to do that. We should be able to do that pretty quickly. And then, identifying where we would look at the public portion for the school and removing the clearly not compatible use with what we're looking for, which is retail, commercial, and, I guess multifamily residential in the southern portion. But that seems like something we should be able to turn around pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would
on
like
our
to
side.
ask if Drew or Horace or both of you guys could come up. I want to ask specific questions about what that will take. Yeah, we're going to run into the same issue with no matter who the buyer is. If they get in here and they dig in, they're going to realize that there's that commercial section, which really, frankly, Stephen, we should have done it already, because with the Live Local Act, we have no control. We have
But
no
Jeff,
control. They can
Jeff,
come in and build whatever they want.
Jeff, you're absolutely right, and I'm not going to get in conversations about lawyers and documents, because we're never going to settle documents.
Yeah.
And look, we got a legal department that we pay, and I'm never going to give an opinion legally, because we don't seem to win.
We don't use our opinions,
Yeah, so I don't have an opinion with legal, but I'm going to say a couple things, Jeff, then I'm going to be done, because you're right, we wasted hours on this deal. I'm not a developer. But I do understand that location and zoning dictates price every day of the week. And so we have to have the zoning, because it simply, think whatever that master plan is y'all have that they had, it's not worth its weight, because it has no engineering and it has no real roads. It's just a pretty picture. That's all it really is. And so, and I'm following your lead in Commissioner Berry, because it's your districts, because when you started up zoning and changing zoning and all those things, then the residents get very upset. And so to me, I agree with one, Fred, thank you. I said I'm not voting for anybody if they don't bring 25 million in. That's one. And so I'm glad that have. I agree with you and Commissioner Berry. I can tell you the two young guys that came in here would tie that property up for $25,000 for a year or 2 years. Anybody would tie it up and assign that property if they had that ability to assign it or do something for $25,000. That's probably a non-starter. I appreciate Fred bringing the 25 million, and I've said that I'm going to support the 25 million or above. I like what Kohler said. I think it's worth more. And the value of that property, Jeff, is going to decide on the zoning, honestly. That probably could be worth 25 million. That probably could be worth 50 million. It just depends on what the zoning is. So I do agree with them. We have some due diligence on our own to fix that. Take that, whatever that plan means, fix the zoning part of this, and then that's the value of what that property going to be, the zoning and the location. It wouldn't matter. We've had this advice. Jim Cronley was the front lead on this thing. You can talk to Quint Studer, Jim Cronley, Jim Reeves, Chad Henderson. You can talk to any Inspire. You can talk to Harold Dawson, any of those guys that really do real development. They will tell you that you got to have your zoning in place to get maximum value for the land.
We do. It's just not working commercially because we've taken the 250.
Whatever it is, I'm saying we come to these meetings and we spend 2 hours. We all know that we got to fix the zoning on the property. I'm all about incentivizing. They gave $25 million. They were going to do some affordable housing. There should be some bonus points. There should be some tax credits. But that would be my position if I was voting. I'd say the residential and mixed use has to be some affordability component to it. For me. But that's probably not where you or your residents in Nature Trail will want. So we all have have our opinion, so let's put the zoning in place. And then, Jeff, I know you're in a hurry to get it off. I do too. But I'm not interested, 25 million today and 2 years from now may be, worth 26 million. I don't know, but I do know that we need to get out to the development business.
Yes.
And put it in the hands of the developers and get the maximum amount of money that we can get out this deal and move down the road. You know what I mean? And I hear what you're saying, that we're going to make 10 million. We haven't invested a lot with the Navy. I mean, this is a 20, 30-year project. This is not a 4-year project or 8-year project. I mean, there are people like the Admiral, like the Cronleys, that have worked, Freddie Donovan. They've worked on this thing for 25 or 30 years. And so we owe it to all those people who invested their time. I mean, some are gone on to make sure that we just get it right. And so however you and Steve go with that, it's good. But, for me, I mean, a non-starter for me, I agree with him and Fred fixing the Civic. I don't understand if this property is so valuable, why would we put a non-producing Avalon product on it? I understand you may need a fire station here or there, but I mean, I can just tell you, it's going to be difficult for me to come. I know I'm not going to vote to donate it. I mean, I can just tell you, we paid millions of dollars. I was not the commissioner. We paid millions of dollars to be next to Rolling Hills Dump in Wedgewood from the school district when we bought, Wedgewood for $3 million, and so, I'm not, going to be very supportive of just, I know that's important to you, but I'm not going to vote to give any land to something that's not Avalon producing because, that's just the way it is. You can find, in my opinion, you could find other properties in that area at a lower rate to do a school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, however you want to fix it, Jeff, I got to go.
Well, no, I hear you. So, Drew, if you can come up. So if we were going to start the process of changing those two portions of the 290 acres, I know we voted to implement the master plan as the code, as the zoning for that. If we were going to change those, I mean, you've listened to the discussion. There's obviously some problems that are not going to work in terms of getting us a sale or contract language that we want for understandable reasons, but it's because there's a civic section in their 290. I mean, obviously we've kind of changed some things around and taken 250 acres. They want that changed, and they want the light industrial that's on the 290 acres taken out. How long would it take to do it, and what process would be, whether or not we're do it for Fred or for, for the other group that was interested or the third group, how long would it take for us to do it?
So you have retained the ability to do so.
Yes.
With this board. I don't think any of the future land use changes would rise to large-scale acreage and have to go to Tallahassee, so it would all be local. Depending on meeting schedules, 3 months is an approximate for any of that.
So 90 days. So it would take us 90 days to do it.
But to do so, bear in mind, I don't have anything delineated here.
Right.
We're talking acreages. To proceed with rezoning, I need some exactness there.
Right. Who has the diagram? Can we pull up the map, the diagram of the field? Can you pull that up?
I don't
Wes, will you interject here? This is something y'all talked about after the last meeting?
We did. We have
Okay.
talked about it.
All right. And I understand what you're saying about that, but, putting the pencil to paper, I mean, to start to sketch some of this out, what we would need to change, we have an idea what that is right now, right?
We have a rough idea, yes.
Yeah, rough idea.
How many acres are we talking, Wes?
It's roughly 290, but we've not had an initial survey to make that divide across the property. So that probably needs to happen, is to get a true legal description and then be able to go from there. We've had some large, high-level discussions with Will and Fred. I thought we had a good meeting. He expressed some of the same things in that meeting as he's expressed today, and I think I've communicated that even prior to that meeting, that I think it would be more valuable, marketable, if we would take the lead and make those changes and then go back out and negotiate or take additional offers. But we know roughly what we need to do, and I think we can bring it in.
I appreciate that. Let me ask, so this, you think 90 days or thereabouts to do it? Oh, you're smiling. Longer?
Depending on scheduling of meetings. Okay. Remember, it's always going to, the exact timing comes down to when applications get in, when we get everything in to us, and we get moving.
But at least in this instance, it's timelines that we control.
Right.
They are timelines we control. And their application, the preparation of an application is a timeline that our staff's going to control, which means Wes is going to control that. We can control meeting timelines.
And Commissioner, rezoning is, who the applicant is depends on who owns the property.
Yeah,
So this would have, I'm assuming if it's not changing hands, it's going to have to be initiated by
Yeah, it
the
would be
county.
us.
Yeah, it would be us.
Yes, sir.
We would have
And also, Commissioner, and it's fairly more attainable for us with our own property because we do not have ideas. But trying to plan for a other person developer in which we don't have nothing to work with, that's a little premature. But with us, we exactly know what we're working with. It is more attainable for us to do it. Like any developer or rezoning, they bring their product to us. And then they tell us, they present some type of plan to us.
But you
At
hear the
this point,
concern,
we
though,
don't have
But I
anything
think
yet.
it's still reasonable, even if the action we're doing is delineating the 250 acres on the northern portion and removing the light industrial from the southern portion. Those are things that that have to be done.
Yeah,
So
to make it viable
yeah, so
commercially.
let's move at a very expedited manner. Let's move forward in the most expeditious as we can to do the things that we know have to be done, which is going to be remove the light industrial from the southern portion and delineate what 200 specific, because and they're making an offer for 290 acres. We really haven't said which 200, exactly what's
Right, they
their
have a rough
290,
diagram.
what's their 290 versus what are we keeping. So we need to do that as well. Well,
Yeah, it's-
that's not, I mean, we have not done that on our end. And if we're talking about changing, if we're talking about delineating what we want to hold the 250, then we need to make a firm statement. This is going to be, we've said 250, but we haven't said, exactly what that delineated line is going to be. I know they may have made a proposal, but it's not, it's not surveyed. It's our property, so they haven't been out there to survey it.
Yeah,
And Jeff, Steve, and both of you are taking this lead, and it makes a lot of sense what Horace just said, and, developer coming, before you get the zoning, but who's working on the other 250? Is it Florida West?
Yeah,
because
so-
that's my number one priority,
So
is
Florida
the
West,
job creation.
Yeah, Florida West is working on it, and I can, they're
Shouldn't they
working
be
on
at the
it.
table for the zoning if they're the ones that's going and looking for the jobs?
They're moving forward with the approximate area. I'm sure that a surveyed line of showing their 250 would help them, but they're having multiple discussions with folks, and I would not be surprised if we were to receive some type of letter of interest from someone within the next week or so. I would not be surprised for a portion, for maybe a small portion of that 250. But Florida West is who's having those conversations and moving and trying to move those things forward.
And my only point, Mr. Chairman, in saying that I don't serve on the PEDC, and that's kind of, you guys' lane, but I just would think that they got to be a part of the conversation with the developer, because what if he was getting a job and he needed 260 acres, and we were 10 acres short of losing Amazon or UPS or one of the other,
Then
I
that
think we
would-
have to
that-
stay focused on why we got that.
Yeah.
It was,
If those
it was for
conversations,
jobs.
if those conversations were to happen, then that would result in a high priority discussion amongst us.
Okay,
But
and I don't
we
know.
We haven't gotten there.
Yeah,
yet,
I don't
so.
really talk to Florida West. I would assume that, you guys on the PEDC are doing that. But I do know that there was a commitment for job creation. And so, I'm all for whatever town center you and Jeff want to do. But, I'm committed for job creation. I heard the speaker today said, we gentrified downtown, so now they're not safe. So, we have to figure out where we're going to, we're not going to do more affordable housing. We got to create jobs where people can afford the homes. And so, to me, if we can incentivize a developer, Jeff, honestly, for me, across this country, municipalities incentivize developers to bring forth the product or the vision that the county needs for the people. And so if that meant we had to give away some acres to do affordable housing, that makes sense to me, and I get it, people don't want low income in their neighborhood or whatever, but if we don't take this governmental asset to help the least of them, they're never going to have any, opportunity to go live in a good neighborhood.
No,
And that's just, if we're going to redo this thing, we got to do it. At the end of the day, I'm not going to vote for anything, like I said, less than, 25 million. You said extra 10, that's not a lot. That's not a lot of sidewalks or lights, honestly. Maybe 2 million a district. But more importantly, if I had to give it all up to make sure that there were residents that had a safe place to work and then, a safe place to live, Jeff, I would be all for it.
Yeah. No, and I would say this too, Lumen. I agree with you on the job creation. You know I do. I never wanted one house on that lot. Everyone knows it. They saw the meetings. We did a compromise, and that's what happened, right? This board compromised, and we have a plan now. But once...
And Jeff, the only reason I was saying, the only reason I responded to Steve on that, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, you know, I'm not opposed to anything that's happened here on Outline Field 8. But we have to still stay committed. We spend a lot of time talking about residential and zoning and retail, and we don't spend a lot of time talking about job creation, which was the initial intent of why we got that land. And so to me, we get all sidetracked in town centers, and we're not focused on what was promised to the people, and that was jobs. And that's...
Yeah, well, that's coming.
We spent a lot of time on this, but we never spent any time on.
Well, we
what
spent it in the
intent is.
PEDC. PEDC, Stephen, myself.
Well, I don't go to PEDC, so that's why I was asking.
Yeah, we've been talking. Believe me, we've been talking about this, the bluffs, everything. But back to this. I mean, we're never gonna get a contract that meets everyone's approval if we have these lingering zoning. So I like the idea, Stephen, of doing the survey. You know, delineate the 250 acres, put the Civic back on the northern portion if that's what you're thinking. I mean, and then
If I keep hearing that Civic, what are y'all talking? What are you talking about?
government buildings, post offices. That's in the master plan, but it's not in the northern portion.
Yeah, I mean, I know the school district needs 25 acres. And,
25 acres is fine.
Yeah, I mean, they would be paying. I mean, that's
Yeah, of
not.
course.
It's just, but we need to pencil that somewhere. I mean, and if it's not
Now,
going to
if
be in
they're
the southern
paying,
portion,
Steve,
that's
I'm
fine.
good as long
Yeah.
as it's not taking away from the jobs. I mean,
Yeah,
the minimum. And I don't know if you're on the PEDC. I mean, I guess that number 250 came from somewhere, Steve. PEDC or economic development people that said, you know, we need 250 acres for the jobs. And
It was,
their
it was,
prospects.
I mean, it was really just, that really didn't come from PDC. It really just came as a discussion from our board. Commissioner Bender, I mean, it was something, you know, he was very adamant about last summer as well, if you remember some of the conversations that we had about it. But no, that didn't really generate at PDC, the 250 specifically.
Yeah, no, I think, we're the ones who pulled 250 out. Okay, so that we're not just
But
doing
I'm
an exercise
comfortable
of futility.
giving the administrator the direction to deal with some of the things that we know are issues. You know, and it may, it may seem like I'm being critical of the contract that came from, that has come from Will, with regards to this, but it was the same issues that came from the one last summer that we just weren't able to move forward with. They just didn't really, they went back and forth a couple times, and then they just said, forget it. They just said, we're never going to agree to those terms, so forget it. And it would be the case no matter who the proposer is. We just can't leave those kinds of ambiguities in there, and maybe that's our fault. Like I said, maybe it's our fault, but if we know there are things that we need to do on our end to try to shore up what are going to be contract problems with anybody, then let's get that going on a fast track.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, Stephen. Maybe we should have done it. The only thing I would say is, when you've got a bird in hand, you heard him say 90 days, and then we heard our own staff say maybe 90 days. So
Yeah,
I don't attribute bad faith to them and what they've tried. I mean, a one-year close, there is a lot of work that would have to be done. But no matter what, whether it's Fred's group, whether it's Shavers and Mo, whether it's this other group out of Alabama, they're going to need those changes to make it economically viable. They're going to need it. So let me ask Fred and Will, if I had a magic wand and suddenly those changes were on the board, everything you wanted on the 290 acres, would you change that language? Would you change the language?
Yeah, we would. We would, but right now, I don't know what the chances are that the configuration you would come up with would fit what works for us. That's my point. And that's what we're saying here in our contract. We will get that to you in 90 days. And that's with the experts at Metro Development looking at it, trying to see what is the right layout. The synergy has to work. We're not getting involved in a deal if we're choked to a point that we don't feel that the synergy of the town center works. We'll walk from it.
Well, just a curious question. I know you guys put a lot of effort into it, multiple iterations, the contracts, meetings. How come you haven't come and brought and said, you've got this portion that's civic, and that's not going to work, but here's what we would suggest? Or this portion over here is, light industrial, which could be immediately converted to housing, high density, 6 stories. How come you haven't brought that?
That's a lot of money, and we're not going to incur that expense until we have a signed contract.
Okay. Well,
I mean, the engineering work, that it's just an expensive proposition to lay out something like that.
So what I'm hearing from you is there's every probability that if we undertake the effort, the county staff, we put them on the hamster wheel and we take the Civic out, take the light industrial out, do the demarcation line, you're still going to come back and request changes. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, let me also point out, it's not just the industrial and the Civic. If you look at that zoning, what DPZ originally planned was the boulevard going all the way up to the north.
Right.
And now that that's taken out, all of that zoning on both sides of that boulevard are thrown out the window. So if you just change the industrial in the Civic, you've got a hodgepodge of stuff in between the two of them. So what do you change that to? We don't
That's
know.
the
We don't
question.
know where the road's going in yet. There's a lot of things that have to be determined. You have to do it in the right order. And with all due respect, I think you're taking it out of order.
So Fred, so in concept or in theory, that DPZ, whatever that master plan, are you working from that? Is that your kind of working document as you kind of lay out, what's actual going to be there?
Generally following that, yes. Yeah.
So you're happy, you're satisfied with that? You feel like you can implement kind of your vision within what's already been kind of formatted?
Correct. Correct. The layout, how things work, traffic flow, the balance between some commercial or retail, all those type things need to be done by somebody who's a professional.
Right. Well, so I mean, I guess my question is to those residents and those people that did all those dial sessions and town hall meetings, to the average citizen that was able to see that on the screen, when they're actually looking at your product, it's going to look similar to all the things that Teresa and those have been pushing out there. That master plan, or will it be completely different?
I think it would be similar, but we're going to look at, as I said before, you go to Huntington Creek, and we have Horton homes in there. You can't see which homes are Horton. They all look good. And so Metro has their own design standards, forms, all the things that they would do, they would apply those to this.
So that million at Navy Federal, was that plan a benefit for you in your development, or?
Oh, I think so, absolutely.
So you would kind of use the blueprint to kind of implement?
Yes. Yeah, I think the first one that we crudely did generally followed that plan.
Okay.
But now that, we were.
And you feel good that you're going to be consistent with that, is my question.
Yes. Quite frankly, we were unaware when we looked at the overlay how much of it was civic and industrial. Well, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
But the plan calls for that civic, or did it not call for it, the initial plan they had?
The approved plan called for it.
It did.
Because I know Jeff always talked about it, and which I never really supported, but I always talked about a school and a fire department and other public amenities. And the only reason I say that, Fred, and I appreciate you coming back with, with the number, is that, I'm sure that my colleagues are going to have to answer to their constituents about things that they laid out in that plan, and whether or not you're going to be actually able to implement those. And so, I mean, is it a reply back that, that was pie in the sky? I mean, that really doesn't work. I mean, what they laid out, or, yeah, we're going to be able to incorporate that. We just need to make sure the zoning is right.
Well, we looked at the plan. We thought generally we can make that work. However, there's a lot of areas that don't fit. So that's why we said we'd come back in 90 days with our plan.
All right. Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know where that leaves us.
I mean, I think, start with the thing it leaves us telling the administrator to fast track some of the changes that that the board has given indication that we absolutely want to see in the master plan.
What will we replace the civic that we pull? Obviously, we've got to pull the civic portion out.
Let's see what they propose. I mean, let's see what their ideas are. I mean, a lot of our staff took part in these. They were here for the DPZ stuff. Let's see what they think most fits what maybe was proposed in either the Horton plan, Horton and Sterling's plan last summer, or what is what we've seen at least from an iteration from Fred and them. See what see kind of what the staff proposes, and I mean, if we're changing, I mean, there are changes that are going to be, not that big a change. If you're making a change from, from one thing to another, it may not be that major versus changing from civic to residential or from industrial to residential. Those are huge changes.
Yeah, right.
If you're changing from a different type of residential or, from commercial to, if we identify something as commercial and they say, well, we need half of that to be maybe mixed use. Oh, okay. I mean, maybe that's close enough to be okay. But what they're talking about doing you know, the 90 days, that deal from that side, that's only 90 days after entering a contract. Well, once we enter the contract, then, especially the contract as it's proposed, we just don't have, I mean, you know, maybe it's 90 days, maybe it's not. And then what if we don't like it? And then you know, we have a contract then. We're under contract, you know, and if anything else comes up, I mean, I think there are some things that we absolutely know that have to happen from our side. Why don't we go ahead and try to address those as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think we have to at this point, yeah. And so what's the motion that you need?
Okay. Maybe the administrator can take
I
that
think we understand the direction.
to work with staff. I mean, like I said, this was the first thing he asked after he met with Will and Fred was, you know, Stephen, they've got some good points, and there's some changes that we need to make no matter what we do. So, okay, you know, I think he's probably right.
Wes, what's the timeline of getting something?
Well, I think Drew mentioned 90 days, but we will work as expeditiously as we possibly can and keep you updated on that time frame as we move forward.
Okay. And then taking into account
Absolutely.
their issues? Okay. All right. Is that enough?
I think so.
All right, thanks.
Madam Counsel.
There are 2 items on the county attorney's report. I can answer any questions.
All right, 2 action. I'd entertain a motion for 1 and 2, 1 being A, B, and C.
Okay, so moved.
All right, please vote. Madam Counsel, or County Attorney's report passes 3-0. Commissioner May off the dais. Anything else? The Attorney's office? Mr. Administrator? All right.